Everyday shocking acts are caught on camera.
Stop it! Why are you naked?
But these lawless individuals leave nothing to the imagination.
This dude is naked.
He's naked. He ain't got no pants on.
On this episode, a terrifying home invasion.
Wait, you're here! My house.
When the person said, "This is my house," that made everything even more traumatized.
A pizzeria is robbed in the middle of the night.
They see the suspect inside the establishment, naked, slamming the cash register drawer to the floor.
A woman leaving her house gets the scare of her life.
In that moment, it's either fight or flight.
And a dramatic school drop-off both dad and daughter will never forget.
Oh my God, there's a naked man running down the street.
You wonder what's he gonna do?
Holy!
Nestled in the Santa Monica Mountains, Bel Air is an affluent Southern California zip code.
It is Beverly Hills adjacent. It is dotted with huge mansions, giant landscapes, and even bigger security at all the homes that line the streets. It's not the type of community that you associate with high crime.
Which makes what happens at Matt Saab's secluded home even more shocking.
It was a Thursday, and I was staying home. I took the day off. I went for a run, and my wife took the kids to their grandma's house. I came after my run. I went upstairs. I was in the shower when I heard the security camera going off. I thought my wife was home early, so I didn't pay attention.
At the same time, Matt's wife Monica receives an alert on her phone from their home security system. Cameras around the entire house are being triggered.
She just looked to see, is the delivery guy, who is it? And she saw a naked man outside. I go out of the shower. I hear a lot of noise downstairs. Again, I think it's my wife and the kids are home. I mean, you don't think an intruder just came to your house?
Someone came inside the house. Inside whose house? I saw it on the camera. On the driveway? Where's someone? Inside our house.
He went to my gym bag and put on my shorts. He put on my shoes. He hears someone upstairs. It was me talking to my wife. He comes toward the noise. You're just shocked and you think maybe someone came into the wrong house? I mean, it happens. I mean, maybe the person just came to the wrong house.
Hey, what are you doing here? My house. What are you doing here? I'm gonna call the police right now. I'm gonna call the police right now. No, get out of the house.
When the person said, "This is my house," that made everything even more traumatizing to begin with.
And the guy isn't stopping. Slowly, he's heading up to him.
Right away, I knew something was not right, and I knew the best idea is not to engage. So I calmly walked away, closed the door.
Clearly, he's dealing with someone who's probably very dangerous, and the homeowner understands his limitations.
There was no lock on the door, so I'm using my body to hold the door. There's a part of you thinking that this is going to push. What's going to happen? I'm going to go in a wrestling match. So after 1 minute, when I didn't see him pushing the door, I thought, he's not here yet. Let's just run.
In that moment, it's either fight or flight. The homeowner has to climb down from his balcony, jumps off the balcony onto the hood of his car, only wearing his underwear.
I was literally on the phone telling the officer, 911 operator, that I am escaping my house.
While Matt makes his escape, the intruder continues to make himself at home. A reality not lost on Monica, who's still watching from afar.
Get the out! Now!
What?
Get out! I'll call the police! Get out!
There's speakers on a security camera, so my wife was telling the intruder, "What are you doing in our house? Get out."
Get the out! Now!
I would have tried to do the same thing as she did. You want to try to show anger and force.
Get out!
Hopefully, you trigger some sort of reaction to get them out of there, but nothing is working with this guy. Nothing.
Daringly, Matt Saab has escaped his Bel Air home, but in the process, a naked man with unknown intentions is still inside.
As I'm calling 911, I also call the security, the private security that we have. They decide that, hey, let's not stay here. So I climb on the balcony to my car. I jumped out. I'm barefooted. So now what is this guy gonna do? Is he just gonna steal stuff? Because he didn't go through my wallet. I was worried that he set the whole house on fire.
After 20 agonizing minutes, the community's private security detail arrives.
Get on the ground. Get on the ground. Get the hands behind your back.
When he saw the gun, he respected the gun. He got down, and then they handcuffed him. And once I got in the house, I tried to talk to him.
What do you want to have? What's your name? What's your name?
He didn't say a word to me.
With the naked perp in handcuffs, Matt decides to check his 29 security cameras to learn what transpired during his shower.
This particular burglar was able to gain entry into the residence by entering an unlocked vehicle, and he was able to use this garage door remote control to enter the residence.
And it's the dining room camera that captures something so horrifying. It provides a hint to Matt and his wife how dangerous this man really was.
Most things we realized after everything was gone, because you have so many cameras.
Hold on.
And then you find the birds.
These were beloved pets. They cherished these birds. They had 2 children. This was their pets. Watching this scene unfold churns my stomach.
After being taken into custody by Los Angeles police, the intruder is identified as 34-year-old Paul Keon, a transient.
This is certainly an example of the homeowner using the security system the way that it was meant to be used. It was very important that not only did the alarm alert the wife who wasn't home so that she could notify her husband who was in that home with the crazed individual, but that he had the presence of mind to leave and then call authorities and let them come in and deal with him.
When we remodeled this house, we built a balcony with doors. And of course, the wife was kind of against that. And I always made a joke that, hey, if something happens, we need to run away, we need to escape. I can't escape from the balcony. But once I can tell my wife I was right, it was a good idea to build a balcony.
In January 2022, Paul Keon is found guilty on burglary and animal cruelty charges and is sentenced to 2 years in state prison.
It just made this whole thing weird. I mean, someone nude coming to our driveway. I mean, this whole thing, yeah, because there's so many questions even today. How'd you end up in Bel Air? How'd you end up in a hillside? At one point, did he get naked? Why did he get naked? It's just still puzzling.
I would describe Oakville as a sleepy bedroom community. A lot of people work in Toronto and come out here. It's very quiet.
Scott McKinnon and his daughter Lola have a routine during the school year. Every morning, they wake up, get dressed, and head outside to their car.
I take Lola to school around 8 o'clock in the morning every day. A lot of times we talk about music and bands. Lola's a big fan.
I remember that morning I took a picture of the sky because there's this rhyme that goes, red sky in the morning, sailors take warning, red sky at night, sailors delight. Should have taken warning.
As they approach a busy intersection just 2 blocks from Lola's school, they hear sirens. Instinctively, Lola pulls out her phone and starts filming.
Lola was like Wyatt Earp. She, in one move, just pulled it out and was filming.
I saw this guy and I was like, oh my God, there's a naked man running down the street.
Holy!
It's weird, it's freaky. Like, you just can't process why that guy's there at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Oh my God. What is that guy's problem? I hope the cops get him.
The McKinnons' initial shock quickly turns to concern.
If he's willing to run fully naked down a main street that's got to be full of rocks and broken glass, you wonder what's he going to do? And he was running right by our car.
I did check to see if the doors were locked. There started off 1 or 2 cop cars at the scene.
There was 8 or 10 police cars by the end of it.
That's one of the most exciting things I've ever seen.
These officers eventually catch up with this individual who's been running and are able to gain control and get this individual into handcuffs. And so thankfully, the officers didn't cause any great injury to the individual. The individual didn't run out into traffic and get hurt by oncoming traffic.
I suggested maybe a husband came home and this guy was with his wife or his girlfriend or something. We didn't know.
The situation is even more dangerous than the McKinnons realize.
Just blocks away from where this occurred, the suspect assaulted a homeowner, stabbed him, and took off all their clothes, jumped out of the window of the house, and then took off running.
Once Lola and I found out that this guy actually had assaulted someone, it did put a little different spin on our incident.
It was just kind of like shocking.
Thankfully, the officers were able to apprehend this guy because he could have hurt and assaulted someone else, he could have carjacked someone, he could have done a multitude of things.
The suspect, who hasn't been named publicly by Halton Regional Police, is charged with mischief under $5,000, assault causing bodily harm, and assault with a weapon.
Never even seen anyone get arrested before, so that was definitely like, oh, that's an extreme.
You got a naked guy.
I got a naked guy. The guy's running naked. Holy. Me and my dad, I feel like after this experience, we're definitely trauma bonded in a way I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, I agree.
That's one of the most exciting things I've ever seen. Wow, that's a story to tell.
Slice Pizza in Towson is going to give you a free pizza pie for the rest of your life if you can identify a naked burglar.
This perpetrator, he's trying to shield his identity by putting his clothing over his head.
Honestly, thought I was dead. I was going to die that night.
She's trying to make her escape. Hopefully this is coming to an end, but really it's not.
Slice Pizza in Towson is going to give you a free pizza pie for the rest of your life if you can identify a naked burglar.
It's 8 a.m. at family-owned Slice Pizza, and Yanni Rizas arrives to open up for business as usual.
They get to their pizzeria and they can see that their door has been broken into and that inside the establishment, it's been ransacked. Thankfully, the perpetrator is not there. Wanting to understand what happened, the business owner decides to sit down and take a look at their security footage. They see the suspect inside the establishment, rummaging through the business, locating the cash register, slamming the cash register drawer to the floor, and he's naked.
While putting the ransacked restaurant back together, the owner realizes how the burglar ended up in the buff.
To come in from the roof, his pants got stuck in the ductwork, so he had to climb out of those, and he actually fell into Slice. So I guess he was going commando because he was running around naked in the back.
He realizes the burglar had come in through the heating vent. And as he lands on the floor with no pants, so what does he do? He decides to be consistent. He takes off the rest of his clothes. Why? Who the heck knows?
This perpetrator was thinking that he could be surveilled because he's trying to shield his identity by putting his clothing over his head. The suspect takes a little bit of cash and some checks, and then he leaves.
With footage of the perpetrator, the restaurant owner contacts police in hopes he can be quickly apprehended.
The business owner doesn't just have the security footage. He tells them about a suspicious car that was lurking in the alleyway.
The business owners offer a reward. Anyone who can provide information that will lead to the identity of the suspect is promised pizza for the rest of their life.
Unfortunately, a lifetime of cheesy goodness fails to entice anyone to come forward with information. But a few days later, police get a break when the suspect tries to make his naked gambit pay off.
He takes one of the stolen checks to the same bank that the business owner uses and tries to cash it. So this provides a great link for law enforcement because the bank video footage shows the same vehicle that was mentioned by the business owner. So the perpetrator just keeps going to places with cameras to commit his crimes.
Police link the car to 23-year-old Jonathan Newman, and it's his nakedness that unrobes his anonymity.
I think what the perpetrator didn't think about was all the identifying marks on his body in the form of tattoos. If you're going to commit a crime like this, don't have so much ink.
11 days after the burglary, police locate Newman in a surprising place.
What was ironic is that police officers located the suspect behind the pizza establishment where he had committed the crime about a week later.
Jonathan Newman is charged with second and fourth-degree burglary, malicious destruction of property, theft, and forgery. He pleads guilty and is sentenced to 10 years in prison, with all but 3 years suspended.
Initially, the business owner offered free pizza for life for anybody that helped capture this guy. But when the police did it, he went ahead and offered the police free pizza for a month. I would have been in that place every day.
Incredible video of a naked man on a rampage in Orange County.
I can't imagine being this woman. I would be trying to figure out, what is he doing?
Incredible video of a naked man on a rampage in Orange County.
That man stripped off all of his clothes in this field behind me, then he jumped over the fence.
It was a naked rampage unlike anything we've ever seen before.
It's shortly before midnight when Clarissa Vidrio leaves her home and enters her complex's parking lot. Like most nights, she is off to her shift as an overnight security guard.
As she enters her car, all of a sudden, there's a commotion in the stall immediately adjacent to hers.
Here comes a completely nude man, full sprint, who launches himself into the rear window of a minivan.
I can't imagine being this woman. I would probably freeze for several minutes. I would be trying to figure out, who is this guy? He doesn't belong here. He doesn't live here. What is he doing?
He did it with sufficient enough force to break the glass, knock himself down, but then he gets right up. And he just shakes it off. So obviously he's impervious to any feeling of real pain. And so at this point, he's a very, very dangerous individual.
She's trying to make her escape. She's in her car. She's thinking, hopefully this is coming to an end. But really, it's not. Because he then jumps right on the top of her car. The fact that the suspect could even get up after this incident is incredible in and of itself. But then to pick a new target and jump onto her car, it's insane.
He's holding on to the hood of the car. She starts turning to the left and turning to the right, and then she accidentally hits the very car that the guy had just gone headfirst into. And although he is finally dislodged from her car, she unfortunately then crashes her car again into another wall at the apartment complex.
Going through that rearview window and then jumping on the car as the female resident is trying to flee and then being flung off of it, all the while he's naked. I'm sure there are injuries to his body that he probably is going to regret he did any of that stuff.
The other residents in this apartment complex hear this commotion, and they come out just to see what the hell is going on in the garage. And the residents start calling 911. They're approaching him to render aid, and he suddenly just gets up like nothing happened and starts running.
The suspect is apprehended a mile away. He is identified as 21-year-old Garrett Smith. He's charged with being under the influence, vandalism, and resisting arrest.
What this female resident did is appropriate for the circumstances. I would tell my wife to do the same thing. Get out of there as quickly as possible, any way that you can.
Honestly, thought I was dead. I was gonna die that night.
You might laugh and think it's funny how the guy just gets up, falls down, gets up, fall down. But there's also someone else in this story, the woman who felt like she was held hostage in that car while this was happening.
Clarissa attests to this on the local news.
It's hard for me to come outside at night the way I used to. I need someone to come with me.
This doesn't last for one night. This is something that lasts a lifetime.
This season on Exposed, naked crimes,
Drop the sword! Drop it!
nude and unpredictable criminals,
Put your hands up! Put your hands up!
dangerously out of control,
There's an intruder in my house. He's naked.
Get the out of here, bro!
All of a sudden, there's a naked man beating people up.
Call the police! Call the police!
He's really amped up. He's acting very aggressive, and all the while, he's naked.
Swear to God, white dude, naked as a jaybird, on an ATV.
The naked man sitting on the back of the fire truck, Randy Travis.
This is a country superstar, an idol. And did I mention he's naked?
You're a dead man by tomorrow.
Clearly, nothing is going to stop him from getting in there.
Back here now. Get back.
It's something out of a horror movie.
My father was a tireless advocate for the law. He was a criminal prosecutor. Some say ruthless, others say righteous. Yeah, I'm cut from the same cloth. I can't really remember who I was before I became a cop. It's my job to make bad things happen to bad people.
What we feel now bridges the distance between bottomless grief and profound rage. He was my uncle, but he was also my friend. I urge the person who's responsible for this to come forward and give us some peace.
To be gay, it did have a certain amount of danger to it, that lifestyle at that time.
The building was full of people. It wasn't some random act. People knew more than they were saying.
Why would anybody do this? Why?
My brother was my dearest, dearest friend. He understood me. He adored my children.
The things that I think about that might have happened to my brother that day and that night, I think the biggest focus is his shock and pain and horror. I feel always the grief, and I grieve for what might have been.
Can you tell me a little bit about Dave as a brother?
He was my best friend. I could confide in him about anything or discuss anything. It's hard to believe this actually happened to such a wonderful person.
These are people that have had so much pain, so much loss, dealing with people that have lost someone through murder. How can you make it better? You can't.
If there's new information or something in the news, we wonder if maybe there's a connection between this case of my uncle's and another murder.
What we would like to do is to look further into the circumstances of how and why David was taken. We're looking for your blessing, your permission to allow us to undertake that journey, if you will, and bring you along.
Absolutely.
I've been a cop and a professor of criminology for years, and I've used that experience to assemble a squad of civilian subject matter experts. They must approach each case completely unbiased, to not box themselves into conventional thinking, to bring fresh eyes and new technologies to the table. Their job, and mine, is to investigate the coldest of cold cases, the murders that time forgot. David Buller, professor of fine arts at the University of Toronto, fourth homicide in the city of Toronto in 2001. David was openly gay and well known in the local gay community. Much respected by his students, who saw him as something of a luminary, an inspiration. David Buller was last seen approximately 1 p.m. on January 18th, 2001, entering an elevator here, the Connaught Building on the main campus of the University of Toronto. In this building on that day, there was a retirement party on the main floor with at least 150 guests attending. David had a 6:30 p.m. lecture scheduled that same night. The class assembled in anticipation for the lecture. As usual, they were surprised to find that a typically punctual David Buller had not shown up. The next morning at 7 a.m., a faculty cleaning lady enters the office and finds David dead on the floor. Victim of multiple stab wounds, she promptly notifies the police.
I mean, the university you think of as a safe haven, and to have something so dramatic and awful take place there would just be horrifying.
Naturally, speculation arose as to who might have done this, who would be motivated to do such a thing, and take great risk in doing so. Are we dealing with a student? Are we dealing with an outsider?
David's sister mentioned to me that there's a student who's been bothering a number of the professors.
Are there any questions, first of all, with respect to the facts in this case?
Was the office a very bloody mess, like a real mess?
Yes.
As one would think, yes.
Was there a trail of blood leading out of his office?
There was no evidence of blood in the corridor or anywhere else outside the office.
And no footprints, though?
No.
In terms of the stabbing, Renee, the fact that he was stabbed 7 times and there were no indicators of blood trails, what could explain that?
It depends on, whether he was struggling or moving around after several wounds had been inflicted, or whether he had already been subdued somehow, knocked out, and then stabbed. So more information about the crime scene and about the condition of David's body when it was found will definitely be helpful.
Was he found face down on his back?
That should be amongst the coroner's notes.
How much of the building was cordoned off in the initial investigation?
The entire floor would have probably been the inner crime scene, and the building would have been sealed off.
If this was my uncle, I wouldn't stop until I turned every stone. I would search every avenue and try everything I could. There's a killer out there.
I want to hear fresh ideas about who's going to do what. Renee?
I'd like to contact the coroner to try and get a copy of the autopsy report.
Securing that autopsy report is going to be key. Antonella?
I want to see if I can get a psychological profile of David Buller's killer.
It's a place to start.
Knowing that there's a cold case here and that we have time pressure, it creates a little bit of anxiety, I would say, because we don't have a lot of time.
I'd like to visit the site.
So just to recreate the crime scene as it was?
Yeah.
Don't try to mimic what the police have done. We'll approach this with the resourcefulness that you have. It's going to require you staying on target. We talk about this as being another cold case. The reality is, I just met David's niece and his sister, and for them, this case has never been cold. They have remained vigilant in trying to find answers about what happened to David since the day he died. They're putting their trust in you to help them find those answers.
David's murder is particularly disturbing when I picture it in my mind's eye. 7 times someone stabbed him.
How could you have that much hatred towards another human being?
Where did the killer go? How did the killer get there? How did they move so stealthily through a building with at least 150 people, 1 floor down at a retirement party? To me, there's just more questions than answers. challenges for the squad in looking into David Buller's murder is the fact that in speaking with David's family and friends, he seems to have led a compartmentalized life. He had his life as an artist, his life as a professor, and his life as a gay man. The question then is, did the killer come from one of these many lives that David led? Or was this just a random act of extreme violence? I'm on my way to meet David's niece, Karen. Since 2001, she's been continuously pushing for answers in the murder of her uncle. It's my opinion that her insights on this case are essential to our new investigation. Do you think that the sort of sensationalist reportage around David's murder may have influenced the police investigation?
Yeah, I think it could have shaped the investigation early on. I think that the police were making assumptions based on the fact that David was gay, thinking, well, that person must have done something risky, that person must have put himself at risk. It seemed implausible that this could be a random crime, and hate crimes so often are.
In any cold case investigation, family theories about what may or may not have happened are important. They help guide investigators. In David's case, we need to figure out whether or not this was a random act of violence, a hate crime, or what's known as a personal cause homicide, meaning someone acted in order to carry out a specific objective.
What makes sense, in my mind, is that the person who killed David was known to David, and that person was very familiar with the Connaught Building and knew where to find David.
So I think we should go and check out every floor, look at the hallways, the washrooms, exits, and entrance points. This is a great big building.
The neo-Gothic architecture of One Spadina looks to me like something straight out of a horror flick. Knowing that a murder took place just adds to that creepy atmosphere. How badly do I want to see the inside of this building? Very. It's my hope that we're able to try to find this office for the first time. Just get a rough sense of how labyrinthine is the interior of this building. Locked. Let's see if this one's open.
1, 2, 3. So there's 3 floors. So there's the one entrance side. That was for deliveries, maybe? Another door there. So there's another door here.
This is an exit only, I guess. Oh, that's just great.
Asbestos removal in progress.
They're making interior modifications. So our initial idea of quickly running in there, getting a sense of the location, it's a little bit more complicated now.
To kill a man in his place of work in the middle of the day takes a certain kind of perpetrator. I'm meeting with Dr. Giorgio Lacqua to build a psychological profile of David Buller's killer. And given that he was murdered at his office versus his home, what can that tell us about the crime itself?
Let's say there's somebody you don't want to see anymore, you're this grand old friend or somebody you don't want to interact anymore, you would not let this person come into your house. But if it's a public building, the door is open, it probably would have been easier for this person to blend back in after committing such high emotional crime.
So this person is hiding in plain sight, as they would say.
That's, I think, what we're seeing here.
The person would have cleaned the scene. No DNA evidence was found. Would that have been done, I guess, immediately after the murder?
There's an explosion of emotionality and then a return to normality. At that point, the person recouped all his ability to think straight. And if there was anything that should be or could have been put in order, was done.
What about the choice of weapon, Giorgio? What can that tell us?
It's likely that there was some familiarity because the person was able to get very close to the personal space of the victim. If you want to kill somebody with a blade, you really have to be very close.
The use of a knife can reveal a lot about a perpetrator. The act itself was intimate and emotional. It tells us that the person that murdered David likely knew him.
Oh, I was a bit disappointed to see in going through David's autopsy report that where the injuries are supposed to be marked and charted, that the injuries weren't actually transcribed there.
Every medical examiner operates a little bit differently. Although the diagrams weren't used by the pathologist in David's case, he did provide detailed descriptions of each wound in terms of their location on the body, their depth, angle of entry, etc. I'm translating those descriptions into a visual representation and demonstrate visually the pattern of external stab wounds. It's really essential to view them in the context of the body so that we can determine the position of the victim relative to the perpetrator.
It looks like we have transversely orientated, complex gaping stab wound just above the nipple level, 6 stab wounds to the anterior chest and 1 to the left back.
So although there's only one wound, there are multiple tracks inside the body. We just can't see them. Wounds inflicted with a knife really are a dynamic event. To be able to see the angle of entry, the depth, it all comes together to build a picture of just how that interaction took place.
So we have a total of 4 abrasions associated with the stab wounds on the chest.
It seems as though we're looking for a weapon that will have a single blade, but the base of the handle where it connects would have had the ability to cause an abrasion at both ends. Understanding the sequence of blows and the position of David relative to the perpetrator when they were inflicted will really help us put together this picture of whether they're already in close proximity when the attack began and how it unfolded. Once we know what the internal track is like, then we'll be able to map more precisely what the position of the weapon was. So let's start with the first external wound.
Towards the sternum, it didn't pierce very deep. So we actually have 2 tracks originating from this surface wound.
Certainly the perpetrator used a lot of force, so perhaps their first blow was a hard one. The perpetrator delivered the blows in smooth, single action. He was able to penetrate the blade deep into David's body with really no resistance. Visualizing the arrangement of the stab wounds and realizing just how precisely they were placed makes me realize just how close the perpetrator had to get to David to inflict these wounds. He was likely standing right behind him.
Priority task for the squad at this point is determining how and why David Bullard was attacked at his office. I've deployed Peter and Daniel to go down to the university, have a closer look at the crime scene.
Locked.
We need to determine if David not only knew his killer, but if the killer knew the layout of this building.
The issue with access to One Spadina is the contractor has taken over the site. Sincerely, the Office of Space Management. The last possible physical record of David Buller's case is in the process of being destroyed, and all I can do is walk by and kind of watch it day by day. I believe there have been conversations with a number of my staff. Insurances would not allow this. Unfortunately, this request is not possible due to a number of challenges. Unfortunately, not possible, not allowed it. Regards, University Planning, Design, and Construction. Hey, Mike. We just got back from One Spadina Crescent, and it turns out that it's actually closed for asbestos removal.
Until when?
Actually, this building is going to be undergoing a $50 million transformation until 2015.
All right, so I want you to continue to make efforts to get access. This is obviously, when we're under a tight timeline, not good news, right? Better news next time, right?
Fingers crossed. Not having access to the building is incredibly frustrating, especially because it's so pivotal in this investigation. We need to examine the crime scene to unravel and put together the pieces.
If we can't get physical access, the next best thing is going to be the blueprints for the building. I want to see those drawings and see them used in configuring a 3-dimensional retroactive crime scene model.
Map all the paths away from David's office.
Right.
And see where that gets us.
hoping to, first of all, get a feel for the culture and feel of the art faculty at the time. Hopefully, by speaking to students or faculty, I can try and tap into any rumors or gossip or just what people thought did happen. I got completely shut down at the university. Nobody would talk to me about this case, period. I've kind of hit brick walls. So I've decided I'm going to go and do what I do. I'm going to go out and canvass a few areas near the university. Try and find somebody who knew him, may have had a beef with him or know someone that had a beef with David. I believe it was someone that knew him, and I believe it was meticulously planned. I'm working on a case, David Buller.
I've spoken to him, but that's as far as it goes. I hope you solve it.
I've been shut down completely. It's almost like this academic administrative wall. I feel like I've let the squad down to some degree because that's my thing, is getting people to talk. I'm used to getting results, and I got nothing.
Better understanding David's relationship with his students may prove to be a critical piece of information in determining whether or not his murder was what we call a personal cause homicide. We heard rumors that David was dealing with a disgruntled student, but we can't get anyone at the university to speak with us. So I'm going to meet with David's sister, find out what exactly she knows. I wanted to just ask some follow-up questions with respect to some of the facts in issue. Did he talk to you at all in passing about his classes that term?
There was a certain amount of tension because there was a student at the school that had been threatening some of the professors, and he was one of them. Later, I learned that the student was walking around at the back of the class with a knife in his hand. He was tense.
This incident with the knife, was this in one of David's classes?
Yes.
Was he genuinely concerned for his safety?
Yes.
I know the police had an alibi for this angry student, but we need to go back. We need to have a second look at that same information again.
Even though I'm getting stonewalled everywhere I turn in this case, I just got to keep at it. Nose to the grindstone. Something's got to come out of it somehow. Hello. Oh, no, don't worry. It's cool. I'm not a cop. You might be able to help me, possibly. January 2001, at the Connaught Building, right here at Spadina Circle, Professor David Bullard, stabbed 7 times.
You know, Don is his student.
Oh, you know a student?
Yeah, Don is the professor's student.
Does she come here?
She will only Saturday afternoon here.
Thank you so much. I'll see you then. A bit of a breakthrough here. Arranging to meet with someone at 4 p.m. on Saturday that knew David at the time of the murder. Finally, something.
Based on scientific evidence and the civilian squad's own findings in consultation with experts, it appears very likely that David Buller knew his killer. We have conflicting information about the time of David's death. It turns out that he may have been threatened and even stalked during the final months and weeks of his life by someone known only as the Angry Student.
The student was walking around at the back of the class with a knife in his hand.
I need to get the squad on both of these new developments stat. All right, one of the names that keeps coming up, it's not necessarily a name as much as it is just a label, this Angry Student.
Discounted by police.
He was discounted by police.
Well, I don't think that's any reason for us to discount him.
He was eliminated in 2001 because of his being captured on CCTV inside a bank with a timestamp that was deemed to be accurate that would put him far enough away from the location of David's murder at the time of David's death.
So, Mike, if we know the time that he was at the bank, do we also have an exact time when he was murdered?
Renee, on the autopsy report?
The autopsy report didn't indicate how the postmortem interval was determined, so I have no confidence that that particular time that was on the report is accurate.
We already know that during the course of David's murder, during the struggle, the power cord for his computer was knocked from the wall. This created a time and date stamp on the computer's hard drive. Sometime between the final keystroke on that computer and when the power source was disconnected from the wall is when David died. And between those two events, both of which are recorded on the computer's hard drive, we have a fairly firm time of death. We're going to compare the CCTV footage and the timestamp on that to the timestamp on David's computer. And from there, we can figure out if there was enough time between that time of death and when this angry student was last seen on the CCTV footage to get from that bank to the university. The computer is our best eyewitness.
Here we are at the bank where this person of interest started on CCTV at 1:07 p.m. He left this bank, and the question is, does his alibi hold up? So I'm gonna start off my stopwatch, and we can head out now.
Okay, perfect. We're going to 1 Spadina Crescent, the Connaught Building.
This goes to Warden Station, right? Okay. If it takes longer than 1 hour and 22 minutes to get to 1 Spadina, then his alibi holds. We know that this student left that bank at 1:07.
Right.
And so that gives an hour and 22 minutes. There we go. So we've beaten that by a good amount. We just discovered that we cannot discount this student based on his CCTV time alone, because we can very easily travel, on a weekday afternoon from that bank to the building's front door in about 45 minutes, no problem.
I'm meeting a woman named Dawn, who is a student of David Buller's. What interested me about Dawn, first and foremost, is she was actually willing to speak to me, because we'd had a lot of problems on campus getting anyone who is a student or faculty member to speak to us whatsoever. Dawn, how did you know David?
I had him for a full year, first year art studio. He was very easy to be around, very helpful, very accessible if you needed anything.
Okay.
But he always had that professional distance.
Were there any rumors right off the hop about who may have done it?
Somebody off the street, maybe a crackhead somehow came in, got into the
Right.
office.
Any indication towards him dating or seeing students socially?
No, absolutely
Romantically at all?
not.
Not
No.
at all, eh?
And I never saw anybody that could be like a friend or a lover or whatever come to see him at class.
Never,
either.
nothing like that?
No.
What about the other faculty members? As far as you know, did he get along with them, or was there any professional beefs or anything like that you ever heard of? Rumors of?
I wouldn't say they seemed exceptionally friendly with each other.
Well, we've been having a lot of trouble getting faculty and students to talk to us about this case.
Well, I would think if there's students that know something, that they might, be afraid of a repercussion. And staff, I would think, they just want it to go away. It just looks bad.
In this case, for the students or staff not to want to say anything at all, there's got to be a compelling reason there. It makes you wonder, could the killer still be in the building?
They want it to go away, and I bet they want you to go away.
No question that David knew his killer. and the angry student is looking like a viable person of interest. In order to firm up his alibi and also establish a precise or near precise time of death, I'm going to have Peter conduct a forensic computer analysis of David's files. The end of activity on that computer should indicate the time of death and will also help us confirm whether or not the student had enough time to get from point A to point B and commit this murder.
The more I delve into the details, the more I'm struck by how the criminals managed to pull this off, how they're still out there, how there's no answers. Coming from physical sciences, I'm a fan of getting answers.
What's going on here? I see a kind of a retro desktop here.
Yeah. Well, here we have an iMac, very similar to what David would have used in his office. I talked with Lisa Sandloss. She tells me that his original machine has been disposed of. She was able to give me, though, these screenshots of the original forensic investigation. The reason I wanted to get my hands on this is this discrepancy in the times here. The last written time recorded on the file is 2:10 p.m., but the log contents themselves begin with the correct date and then 1:10 p.m.
What would account for the discrepancy, do you think?
Well, the only way I could explain this discrepancy would be to hypothesize that David was in the habit of leaving daylight saving time turned on. That advances the displayed time by 1 hour.
Because this 1 hour is important in terms of establishing time of death and firming up the quote-unquote angry student's alibi. Whether his computer was set to daylight standard time or daylight savings time, that 1 hour difference could change everything. We need to firm up when exactly that final keystroke was. That indicates roughly the time of death. The squad's been trying to track down former students of David's for weeks. Finally, Antonella has located a former student. The student is speaking to us on the condition that her identity remain a secret. Did David have more collegial relationships with other faculty?
I would have to say no. I also detected some kind of political jousting going on right before the end because there has to be a head of department, and I felt like someone was putting David forward for that, and there were other people who disagreed with his politics.
Who interests you in terms of this case?
They really should be looking at faculty, and someone in particular.
Not only is Peter working on solving this time of death mystery, but he and Danny are using technology to grant us access to the building.
If we can't get in, we'll just rebuild the building virtually and see what we can glean from that model. So here we're following the point of view of someone unfamiliar with the building. Right? So they'd look back and forth, they'd have to navigate through these 150 people. I can't wait to see what the squad will do with this. Here we have the main entrance.
Where would David's office have been?
So Renee, which side of the crescent was the crosswalk on?
We need to prove whether or not David's killer knew his way around the building, and more specifically, knew his way to David's actual office.
This is great that we've got the drawings.
Danny and I have some 3D models up on the smartboard.
All right, let's have a look.
I wanted to just have a look at those. We've taken these technical drawings and we've recreated three-dimensional models of the first and second floors.
Okay.
So what we're seeing here is the path of someone unfamiliar with the interior entering the building and encountering this crowd of 150 plus people.
These are the guests at the retirement party.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
So here we ascend the main staircase and we try to make our way to David's office. Unfortunately for this assailant, he quickly gets lost in the labyrinthine passageways. And finally, this unfamiliar person happens upon David's office.
It's not an intuitive route to his office based on the animation scheme I'm seeing and where it's located. We've also examined numerous escape routes. Each one is more complicated than the next, especially given that David's office was located on the second floor.
In the next animation, we have a much more direct route. Here we're simulating what somebody familiar with this building might have done to get to David's office.
You know exactly where they're going.
And they make their way to the second floor.
Up the main staircase. So 2 rights, end of the hall.
And then there's David's office.
So that's what the route would look like. This strongly suggests premeditation or familiarity with the building.
You know, the middle of the daytime, with that many people in the building, to get in and out, very bold, calculating for certain. Someone who is clever.
Maybe the person was already in the building in the morning, had been there for a couple of hours.
The additional question is then the exit route.
Yes, and we have that as well.
Slide.
Excellent.
We're looking at the second floor here. The blue square is David's office.
Green are the elevators.
If you look at these possible exit routes, there is no blood transfer. We already know from examining the blueprints that there were bathrooms located near David's office, that there was art studios located nearby. Studios, like bathrooms, have sinks. This may in part explain why no trace evidence like blood was found near the murder scene. So you're talking about someone who not only was familiar going in, but then exiting was discreet enough and careful enough to not leave any transfer evidence anywhere along this entire expanse.
Somebody had time to perhaps change into different clothes.
I think Dania is bang on here. I think we're looking for someone who was already in the building. In fact, someone we could describe as belonging to the building. Someone who didn't have to run and hide, either before or after David's murder.
To be able to escape without leaving any evidence behind, no signs of blood spatter. There are some very deliberate steps that were taken by the perpetrator to cover their tracks.
All possible explanations lead back to Peter's hypothesis that we're talking about someone who knows the layout of the building and is a familiar user of the building.
Right from the beginning in this case, I was looking for answers. Finally getting some of those, it's an amazing feeling just to know that we can reconstruct what happened. So it feels great.
The more we look into this, the clearer things get. The placement of the wounds on David's body suggests he may have known his killer. The location of his office and the lack of any blood or transfer evidence in the corridor outside the office also suggests that the killer knew the layout of the building. So that, plus what our witness is telling us, suggests that we should be looking at someone within the building itself. Could be a spurned lover, could be someone from the faculty or staff. Peter and Dania threw their 3D model to simulate the killer's movements within the building. That builds a compelling case that David's murder was not a random act of violence. It would seem that it was in fact premeditated and likely committed by someone from within the university itself. That said, we don't have any concrete leads as to who this person was. At this point, it's key that we find someone who knows something and is willing to talk. Going to the art gallery to interview David's friend, Andrew Ward. Andrew.
Mike.
Nice meeting you. David's family describes you as one of his closest friends. So I guess my first question is, as someone who would be maybe a confidant of his, is this a suggestion that David led something of a double life? There is some misinformation about him floating around out there. Whether it's
Well,
right
I think
or
there were people close to the police at the very beginning of the investigation that could have clouded David's personality.
Okay, how so?
You know, the police were always coming to me and asking me these ridiculous questions.
Like?
And, well, you know, did David ever see any of his students?
Okay.
No. He knew there were lines you just didn't cross.
So some of the reports, a late night tryst gone awry or something like that. Okay. Around Christmas 2000, so just a few weeks before David's murder, he made some suggestion that he felt that he may be in danger. Did he ever come to you with concerns about this rogue student? Is the student someone of interest in this case?
No.
No, not at all. Okay.
Not at all.
Why?
Well, I think it's all university related for sure. I think there are other people at the university that raised a lot of red flags.
Who are these people?
Well, and just before he was killed, he stated to me that he had problems with both these faculty members.
David's murder immediately gave rise to a number of theories among his friends and family, each of whom obviously has their own biased point of view. At this point in our investigative analysis, it's crucial that the squad not focus on theories or get hung up on conjecture and focus on cold, hard facts. All right, so we're at the end. So I'd just like to hear your final findings.
On that day, there was a field trip planned for students on the second floor, which is where David's office was.
So the second floor cleared out. That rules out anyone interrupting the killer. Yeah, that can't be deemed a coincidence. It's a fascinating find, so thanks for that. Renee?
I did have an opportunity to review crime scene photographs, and combined with the results of my experiment, confirm that David was likely stabbed from behind. That was likely the first blow. I've learned really to control the emotional response to what are otherwise very visceral and dramatic scenes. The ultimate goal of all of my analysis is to provide some answers for the family. The perpetrator was likely standing directly behind him, and my best guess is that they were looking at the computer screen together when he was surprised by the wound to his back, the momentum of which likely tipped him backwards.
So this is someone he trusted enough to not only get that close, but turn his back to. Peter?
So I put a lot of time into resolving the one-time discrepancy that I found in these reports. And the computer was set to Eastern Standard Time, putting the last action recorded on the computer at 2:25 p.m. When I examined David's computer logs further, I discovered that he continued to work until approximately 2:25 p.m., giving the angry student plenty of time to leave the bank at 1:07 p.m. and make the 45-minute journey to David's office.
These findings are compelling, and I think we've got enough here to put together a final report, and I'm prepared to deliver those findings to David's family. We've hit a brick wall with our own investigation, so it's crucial that we share all of our findings with the police as well as the family. David's murder does fit within the model of what we call personal cause homicide. One of the people you all mentioned early on during the course of my meeting with you was this angry student.
Yes.
And no one was really satisfied that he could be excluded in terms of opportunity. There was sufficient time from his being on the CCTV image at the bank to when we now know David was murdered. We know that he withdrew or was in the process of already withdrawing from the university at the time, and that he left the country shortly thereafter. However, we spoke with several students, but I can tell you, people are very afraid. Their fear and reluctance suggests that there is still someone who wields some degree of power, such that they are deterred from saying anything. There is compelling evidence. This person was familiar with the building, somebody with direct access and knowledge of David's whereabouts and routine. The methodology we use and the rationale behind what we're doing is your best suspects are the ones left standing once other people are excluded. In brief, there's a strong possibility that it was a faculty member in the arts department at the university in 2001 who was David's killer.
I just feel a tremendous sense of relief.
Yeah, I do too.
And I feel very emotional right now because This is what we've wanted, was this kind of exhaustive search. If your theory is true, he didn't die because he was gay. And that is a big deal to me. And he could have. That could have been the answer, but we should have been looking at everything more closely. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Tonight on Dateline.
There was tape all around the property. My grandma told me that my dad and Karen's been shot and killed.
It was violent. They called it a crime of passion.
Someone with a lot of rage in them had to do that.
We didn't have DNA, fingerprints, anything like that.
The family felt like you weren't doing enough because there's no arrest.
Yeah, I know it's incredibly frustrating for them.
You put your detective hat on.
I did. I had a digital recorder. I was able to record both sides of the conversation.
Why didn't you tell the detective about that? Give some proof showing you weren't involved.
I wanted the truth.
There's finally an arrest.
We were elated.
This case is based on rage and obsession.
You have to testify.
It was terrifying. I put on my game face. You're not going to intimidate me.
A determined daughter forced to come face to face with a cold-blooded killer. I'm Lester Holt, and this is Dateline. Here's Andrea Canning with Deadly Obsession.
The 4th exploded on a Thursday that year, blazing its way into a long weekend.
So there's fireworks, hot dogs, parades. Everybody's just kind of having a good time, enjoying life.
One couple had extra reason to celebrate.
You had never seen Mike and Karen so happy.
No, they were especially happy that night.
With no reason to think the fun would end anytime soon.
You had no idea something was coming that was going to rock your family to the core.
No idea.
I thought that I heard gunshots, and even though it was July, they didn't sound like firecrackers.
Soon the police would show up. There'd be plenty of theories.
When he told me what had happened, I knew who did it. This is that crazy psychopath.
But would there be enough evidence?
You've got all these receipts and gas, and you're doing all the math, but...
Nothing physical, no.
The only thing certain in that moment, two people in love were gone. Their celebration over. It was the end of a long 4th of July weekend. Mike Sisko and Karen Harkness had planned a small cookout for that Sunday afternoon, July 7th, 2002. Just the two of them and their parents on the back deck of Karen's house in Topeka, Kansas. Carol Sisko is Mike's mother.
They had invited us for a fish fry, and so the Wurzwicks and I had got there about the same time.
So this is Karen's parents?
Yes. And so we all got out of the car, knocked on the door, no one answered. So we went around to the back.
They saw the sliding glass door was slightly open. They stepped inside, into the kitchen, took a bottle of wine out of the fridge, and made themselves comfortable.
We were on the main floor, and they had a brochure of Jamaica on the table, too.
A fun trip planned.
Yes. And we looked around. I mean, we could tell that they hadn't planned dinner.
Mm.
And
Yeah, they should have been.
And it was about time
starting to
eat, yeah.
cook and have the food out.
Yeah, we hollered for the kids and started looking around.
Karen's dad headed downstairs to her bedroom. Within minutes, he was back, his face pale.
He says they've been shot. And
oh my gosh. I mean, this is,
he,
how do you...
He wouldn't let me go downstairs. And I'm so glad he didn't.
She was stunned. Her son Mike and his girlfriend Karen were dead.
911, what's your emergency? We just gone to our daughter's house. She's downstairs and she's dead.
Surprising that you would get a call like that here?
Yeah, it's not usual to get that type of call out here. There's not a lot of gunshots, not a lot of violence out here.
Richard Voley was a homicide detective for Topeka's police department back then. He was on the scene within minutes of getting the call.
I'd seen murder-suicides before, and that was the first thought that came to my mind. In that neighborhood, it's typically not going to be a typical crime. It's going to be a family affair, and somebody shoots somebody and shoots themselves. And that's what I believed I was walking into.
So this is your gut feeling.
Right.
He talked briefly with Karen's dad, then headed downstairs.
I didn't turn on any lights when I went down there, just used my flashlight. I could tell there were casings down there. I could tell there were multiple shots.
At first, the detective saw Karen face down on her bed. She had been shot at least twice. He assumed Mike had killed her before turning the gun on himself. But when he walked to the other side of the bed, he found Mike. His body was on the floor, wedged between the wall and bed, as if he'd just tumbled off.
And he'd been shot multiple times, too.
Okay. So this idea that this could be a murder-suicide quickly goes out the window.
Yeah, it's obviously not a murder-suicide.
And how could you tell that?
Because, well, when there was no gun present, way too many rounds in both of them to be a murder-suicide.
Of all the crimes you'd seen in your career, how bad was this one?
I've seen some pretty bad ones, but this was significant.
There's a killer at large.
Yes.
Killer you need to find.
Yes.
He had no idea an investigative and legal saga was just beginning. It would span more than 20 years.
It was a long search, and we searched a lot of places. It was a needle in a haystack.
And take trial after trial after trial.
This is a soap opera moment.
Yeah.
It was sick.
Very, very bizarre.
I wanted the truth. I'm telling the truth, and I'm doing the right thing, and I'm not moving.
"47-year-old Mike Cisco and 53-year-old Karen Harkness had been found murdered in her basement bedroom. Detective Richard Voley was trying to make sense out of what he was seeing.
What could you tell as far as just how many times they'd been shot, where they'd been shot?
Well, I didn't spend a lot of time counting. I knew it was multiple times by the casings. It appeared that he'd been shot in the belly and then rolled over, and he took the sheets and covers with him as he rolled off the bed. But then somebody stood over him and shot down into him, as evidenced by the rounds that we found underneath him.
He figured the couple had been sleeping when their killer opened fire.
Do you believe that the perpetrator was inside the house waiting for them, or do you think they came in after? Any idea?
My belief is the person came in after. But in looking for hiding places, somebody could have hidden in there, but it didn't really make sense to me. It seemed to make more sense that they came in afterwards, waited until they went to sleep, and then snuck in the house.
He was certain after he looked around a bit more.
Was there any forced entry into Karen's
no forced
place?
entry. No. The sliding door was ajar, but Mike and Karen smoked on the back deck of the house and didn't lock the door, which in Southwest Topeka, that's probably not that unusual.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of people would probably do that.
Yeah, and I believe that's the way the person entered.
As police continued investigating the scene, Karen's parents and Mike's mom were busy calling their families.
My grandma called me and just asked me if I could come to Karen's house. And I said, sure.
Mike's daughter Haley was 17 at the time.
When I got to Karen's, there was tape all around the property.
What a shock to the system.
Yeah.
What are you
I mean,
thinking?
I honestly didn't even think, there was something going on at Karen's house.
Who told you the news?
And I sat down, and I think it was my grandma that told me that they had been shot and killed.
My gosh. Your reaction to that, I mean, just
unbelievable. It was unbelievable. I was just in shock. I don't think I said 2 words.
Her grandmother continued calling the rest of the family.
She said something awful's happened.
Mike's sister, Kathy Boots, and her husband Mark could hardly believe it. They had just seen Mike a week earlier. They'd been fishing together.
He always had a great story to tell, and he was just the best in every way.
Always upbeat, they said, despite having weathered a divorce 4 years earlier. Mike was traveling constantly as a salesman.
What are we having, Uncle Mike?
And raising 2 kids.
This candle is for looks plus smell.
He really felt like that this was just a tough patch they could get through, I think.
Hey, smile real big, Mike. Let's see your teeth. Oh, those are nice.
And then he met Karen during a night out with friends. She was also divorced with 2 kids. After that, his family said you couldn't keep the smile off his face.
He lightened up when he met Karen.
Yeah.
It really lightened him up.
Was this a fresh start for Mike?
Yes. Yeah.
I think he felt so.
Yeah, he really loved her, and she's a very interesting person, beautiful, athletic, outgoing, had lots of friends.
Including her own adult children, Chad and Aaron.
She was the best mom and the best friend I could have ever hoped for. I could count on her to make me feel better no matter what the circumstances were. She always had the right things to say and always the best advice.
I could get down on myself if I was having a bad day, but she was always there to pick me up and make me feel better.
Cheering you on, keep going.
Absolutely, yes.
Karen knew how to draw people in. Her friend Linda Bryden saw it every day at the Topeka Tourism Office where they worked together.
Her personality was perfect because we would go to trade shows and try and meet event planners, bring their events here possibly, and she was really good at it.
Karen and Mike had just been to Linda's house for the 4th.
And her and Mike both said, yeah, we're getting old and fat, but we're happy. So they were in love.
Were Mike and Karen talking marriage?
They were.
What were their plans?
The week before the murder, I talked to Mike, and he was asking me where's a good place to go on a honeymoon in the Caribbean. I said, St. Thomas is great. Lots of really good places to go, and he was real happy about it.
That's likely why he had that brochure on his table, the one his mom saw. It was there among recent photos and a coffee cup. That cup caught the detective's eye.
There was a coffee cup found on the kitchen table in the house, and a coffee cup in Mike's vehicle out in the parking lot, in the driveway.
Suggesting the couple had been out shortly before their deaths. But where? Maybe it was a place where luck, the good and the bad, collide.
Did you see them on the
Yeah,
video?
we found them on the video.
Lead detective Richard Voley was working the case of his career, a double homicide with the killer still at large. So far, all he had was a lot of unanswered questions. The biggest unknown, who would want to kill Karen and Mike? And even more baffling, why?
Honestly, I'm going through robbery, burglary, that kind of thing.
Voley and his team began at the beginning, tracking the couple's whereabouts during their last hours alive. One of their first leads, those 2 coffee cups found at the scene.
From a convenience store?
From a convenience store.
Voley's investigators traced the cups to a gas station near a casino called Sack and Fox. Had the couple spent time there?
Your investigators spoke to a neighbor about a conversation with Mike the night before?
Yes. The next door neighbor had spoken to Mike, and they'd mentioned that they were going to the casino that night.
Detectives made a beeline for the Sack and Fox.
We went to the casino, got with the security people, got all the videotape that we could.
Did you see them on the video?
We found them on the video and kind of through the cameras, walked through the casino with them to the different slot machines that they'd played at.
Are they having a good time? Does anything seem out of sorts?
No, they're just a regular couple having a good time that night.
Voley wondered if they'd won some money and attracted the wrong kind of attention.
Did you think that maybe someone followed them from the casino to rob them of their winnings?
Yes.
Anyone following them inside the casino?
No one followed them. They didn't have any confrontations with anybody.
Just before 1:30 a.m., Karen and Mike left the casino.
Did the cameras follow them outside?
Followed them out, at least to the parking lot. When they get out to the parking lot, it's dark. It's late at night, so I don't believe it gets them all the way to their car.
Is it possible that there was someone near their car that just wasn't picked up?
It could have been.
Voley's investigators also paid a visit to that gas station.
We obtained videotape from that store and found that they had, in fact, gone in there, gotten coffee. That's where the coffee cups came from.
Minutes later, the couple could be seen pulling out in Mike's Ford Expedition.
Anyone suspicious around them or anything going on with Mike and Karen?
No, there was no one around the store. Nobody followed them in. Nobody followed them out. They were by themselves.
So that kind of, puts a damper on the possible idea of someone following them from the casino.
Right. It doesn't appear that they were followed at all.
Investigators believe the couple drove straight home from there.
There was a report from one of the neighbors that they'd heard a car slam around 2:30, 3 o'clock.
Which fits with your timeline.
Yeah, that's probably Mike and Karen coming home that they heard a car door slam.
Then another sound. Michelle Delgado was 18 at the time and living a few doors down with her mother.
I was kind of tossing and turning, wasn't really sleeping. I was still pretty much awake. I heard a car idling outside the front of the house, and I thought that was weird, just given the time that it was.
And then she heard something even louder, several pops in a row.
Even though it was July, they didn't sound like firecrackers, and it wasn't like a lot of them. And then they, just as quickly as they started, they stopped.
Hours later, her neighbors were found dead.
There were police cars on the street, helicopters overhead, police tape on our neighborhood. And I still remember really vividly, my mom just looked at me and she's like, I don't think those were fireworks that you heard.
Crime scene investigators spent hours processing the house, but in the end, they determined nothing of value was taken.
In the basement, Mike had $900 plus, and Karen had $200 or $300 in her clothes, and her purse was there. Everything was there that should have been there, and it didn't appear like anything had been taken.
So any jewelry?
No, nothing.
Any electronics?
Everything seemed to be there.
So if robbery wasn't the motive, maybe the autopsies would offer a clue. The coroner's report revealed that Karen took 3 bullets in the shoulder, 1 in her arm, and 1 in the buttocks. Mike was shot at least once in the back, twice in his chest, and twice in the stomach.
Did this feel very personal to you, the locations, the number of shots fired, the
Yes.
location of the victims in bed?
Yes. Yeah, we have to look at what the shot selection tells us and the number of shots, what it tells us. If you consider a 10-round magazine with 1 in the gun, that's 11. That means somebody's most likely emptied their gun.
Oh my goodness.
Emptied, shot it dry.
That sounds like rage.
Yes, exactly. And that's what it looked like, was rage.
Someone's sending a message with this killing, these killings.
Definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
A message for sure, but from whom?
The police are looking at everyone initially as a possible suspect.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Including you.
Yep.
The families of Karen and Mike thought they might hear word of an engagement that Sunday afternoon. Instead, loved ones like Mike's sister Kathy and her husband Mark were processing news of the couple's murder.
It hit us all pretty hard, really hard. I was used to talking to him most every day, and Mark was used to talking to him and doing things with him, and it left a huge void, a huge void.
It really changed our lives.
It was awful.
Karen's son, Chad.
Sunday evenings were usually our night alone. Before the start of a work week, we'd go out and have some chips and salsa, maybe a couple margaritas, and talk about the last week, the upcoming week, and spend a couple hours together most Sunday evenings.
But on Sunday night, July 7th, Chad was spending time with lead detective Voley at the Topeka Police Department, where the conversation was anything but comforting.
The police are looking at everyone initially as a possible suspect.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Including you.
Yep. I sit there and being asked, did you murder your mother? Did you murder Mike? I just remember, I can't believe this is happening. This is real, you know. I had to pinch myself to make sure I wasn't just having a horrible dream.
They asked you to take a polygraph?
Yes.
For Detective Voley, no one in the couple's orbit was in the clear.
You have to start talking to everyone in their circle.
Yes.
And there's a lot of people. They have a lot of friends, a lot of family.
Yep.
Where do you start?
You generally start just in the center, with the immediate family.
That also included Chad's father, Karen's ex-husband. The divorce had been Karen's idea, not his.
I think she was just ready to move on and be more happy in life than she was.
You brought him in for an interview?
Yes.
So was there any thought that this divorce maybe wasn't amicable? Or there was some money perhaps at play for Karen's ex, or jealousy that he may have wanted to get, Mike and Karen out of the picture?
Certainly, yeah.
He too was asked to take a polygraph. Voley and his team also took a closer look at Mike's side of the family. That included his 2 teenage children, Haley and Dustin.
Mike's son, Dustin, you learned was out of town.
Yes. He was on a canoe trip in Missouri.
Lots of eyeballs on him.
Yes.
Around the time of the killing.
Yes.
Voley also learned that Mike had a good relationship with Dustin, but things between father and daughter had been strained.
I wasn't home when he wanted me to come home, and I was just really, I was really doing my own thing.
So you were fighting with your dad?
Yeah.
Things went from bad to worse when Mike started dating Karen.
He did spend a lot of time with Karen, and so I felt like I wasn't replaced, but I wasn't as special.
Then Haley started seeing a guy named Chris.
Your dad, at the time, didn't think you were ready for this serious relationship?
Well, me and Chris hung out a lot, and my dad didn't really like Chris.
Just a few weeks before the murders, Mike and Haley's issues reached a boiling point.
My dad told me that I needed to follow his rules, be home at curfew and that kind of thing, or I'd have to move out. And so I moved in with Chris and his family.
So there's a lot of problems going on between Haley and her boyfriend and Mike.
Yes.
You had to take a hard look at that.
Sure.
We weren't really getting along for a little while.
The day after the murders, the detective asked Haley to come in for an interview. She told Voley she was with Chris at his parents' house in North Topeka the night Mike and Karen were killed.
This is a hard question I have to ask you, but do you think you have any ideas what happened?
I don't know.
Haley went on to suggest a theory police had already ruled out, that the crime was connected to Karen and Mike's casino winnings.
I've been thinking about it because they went to the casino the night before, and if they would have won a lot of money.
During a break, she seemed to whisper a prayer.
Please help me.
And appeared to get emotional. Still, Haley's rift with her father was hard to ignore.
How many times have we seen a child is upset with the parents, kills them so, they can be out of the picture and go on to live, a nice life? Was that something that you considered?
Oh, we considered everything.
Then, not long after the murders, the detective got a big tip.
I believe it was a bank alert. A check was discovered that had been cashed on Mike's account. It was just a blank check forged.
Someone was stealing from Mike's bank account.
Wow. I mean, this must really pique your interest.
Certainly.
Somebody pretending to be Mike.
Right.
Did you think it was possible that the killer might have cashed the check?
It's obviously something we have to run down.
A new lead that would point Voley to someone close to Mike's inner circle. Close enough to kill? Investigators were running down a promising lead in the double homicide of Mike and Karen. Someone forged Mike's signature on one of his checks.
The first thing you do is try to find out who it was that cashed it.
And they did. It was a small-time criminal, one who had a connection to Haley's boyfriend.
Was that a friend of Chris's?
An associate. I wouldn't say a friend. Somebody that would have known him.
Did it lead you to focus back on Chris, that maybe Chris had something to do with Mike's murder and then gave his associate the checkbook?
Obviously, we had to rule it out.
Turns out, though, the guy who forged the check was in jail the night of the murders.
So he's out.
Right.
As the killer.
Yes.
But that didn't put the young couple in the clear. The detective had to be sure.
Haley and Chris, you did have them take polygraph tests.
Yes. People react to polygraphs in different ways. If they're just, yeah, let's get it over with. When can we do it? If they have that kind of attitude, that we look at them one way. If they're like, yeah, maybe I will, then we look at them a different way.
Did Haley and Chris easily agree to a polygraph?
Yes.
They passed?
Yes.
And their alibis checked out, as did those given by Karen's ex and her son, Chad. They were all cleared.
I can't even imagine the feeling when the police are looking at everyone around you. Your family members, Mike's family members.
Yeah. But, you got to start somewhere, and eliminate and narrow it down to who really committed such a horrible act.
But the next name on the detective's list seemed an unlikely one. Mike's ex-wife, Dana Chandler. Unlikely because she had recently moved to Denver, which was an 8-hour drive from Topeka.
I'm like, okay, all right.
So she's not even in the area.
She's not
presumably.
in the area. So it sits in the back of my mind that, here's the person we have to check on, because it's not likely somebody is driving 500 miles to do this.
Dana and Mike had lived in Colorado when their kids were young, and it's where Haley felt particularly close to her dad.
We loved being in the mountains and just hiking, fishing and camping and all that stuff. He taught us how to do all of it. I remember I would, hook my own worm and unhook my own fish. I mean, we were really into it.
Haley said her mom, who stayed home to raise her and her brother, worked hard to keep the household running.
She had the nice car, and she always wanted to look nice, and she was very busy.
Would you describe it as kind of a typical family?
Yeah, we had a backyard with the dog, we had the sandbox, all the fun stuff, as kids.
But those happy memories masked a troubled family.
There was always just arguing, just like the constant tone of the household that we were just accustomed to because that's all we knew.
Mike and Dana were married for about 15 years when they got divorced.
They tried to get back together and make it work. It just didn't last.
It wasn't to
very long.
be. Your dad ends up getting full custody of you and your brother?
Yeah.
How did that come about?
The custody was a battle. My mom really wanted us. My dad really wanted us. My mom was found to be really unhealthy and was drinking quite a bit at the time. And so when my dad got custody, she moved to live with her sister to try to get a handle on her alcohol problem.
Ann Hammer, who met Dana in AA, says Dana worked hard to get her life back together. Both were recovering alcoholics and became instant best friends.
What do you think it was about you and Dana that you wanted to spend more time with her?
Well, Dana was friendly. She was kind. She did not have custody of her children. And at the time, I did not have custody of my daughter. And that really kind of formed a bond between us as mothers.
Did Dana miss her kids? Did she want to get them back?
Yes, she did. She did very much.
Ann says Dana was driven, had gone back to school to get her master's degree in accounting. She also remembers the fun times they had together, like at a New Year's Eve party where she grabbed this photo of Dana. And just 2 days before the murders, during that long 4th of July holiday, she and Dana spent an enjoyable day in the mountains together.
The next time you hear from Dana, she has some terrible news to share with you.
She called and told me that Mike had died, and she was extremely upset.
What was she saying?
She was crying. I really couldn't get a lot out of her.
Did you worry about Dana?
I did, sure. Sure, she was my friend and she was upset.
Later that week, Dana drove down to Topeka for Mike's funeral. Detective Voley had already spoken to Dana on the phone, but figured while she was in town, they could meet.
She agreed to an interview, but it had to be in her lawyer's office.
So she had retained a lawyer?
Yes.
You know why we're here. We're looking into the death of your ex-husband and Ms. Harkness.
What was your first impression of her? What was her demeanor like when you meet in this attorney's
She was
office?
calm. She was reserved, very put together.
Dana spoke so softly she could barely be heard on the police recording.
You never lived here in Topeka.
Did she offer any suspects for you of someone she thought might have wanted Mike and Karen dead?
No, she just said generally that Mike had a propensity for getting himself in trouble.
Like the time she said Mike got into a bar fight years earlier. And when the detective asked where she was the night of the murders, Dana said she was in her Colorado apartment. In fact, she shared what she did that entire weekend, saying she spent most of her Saturday shopping.
She went to the King supermarket, she went to Target, she went to the AutoZone, and she went to the gas station.
After a night alone, she said she got up early Sunday to drive 2 hours west to Granby, Colorado. There, she said she went hiking by herself for a few hours. And she could prove she'd been to many of those places she stopped at that weekend. She had receipts.
All that's adding up.
All that's adding up. I mean, the errands were absolutely, that was certain that she did that. There was no question on that.
The interview ended, and it seemed like a dead end. But was there more to her story?
And I said, what was purchased? And he said, 2 5-gallon gas cans and a cigarette lighter.
Why would she need gas cans?
That's what we didn't know. That's what we had to try to find out.
A week after the murders, grief was suffocating both families.
I think I laid in bed most of the time after that, and I don't remember functioning much. I guess that's how I handle things.
You must have heard from so many people saying how
Yeah.
much they missed your mom, how much they love your mom.
Yes. She had told me in our conversations throughout the years what she, kind of envisioned for after she would pass. She said, don't sit around and cry. Have a party.
Aww.
And we went to her favorite spot in Topeka, and the owner had 2 chairs set up, one for Mike and one for my mom, and he'd bought them both their favorite drinks and had them on the chairs.
Oh my gosh, you're
for
gonna make me
them.
cry.
I know. It was pretty great.
Detective Voley had been asking the families a lot of questions. And he was still looking at Mike's ex-wife Dana, who seemed to have a strong alibi.
Did you actually retrace her steps of where she said she was?
Yes, through the King Supers and the Target and the AutoZone and the gas station.
First, that AutoZone visit.
She had a newer car, so I'm thinking, what on earth could a person in her situation buy at AutoZone?
Dana told him she bought a cigarette lighter and didn't mention anything else. But Dana's bank statement, which showed the total but not what Dana actually bought, indicated more than just a lighter.
Well, I called up the AutoZone and said, can you check back through your receipts? And he went back through and I said, what was purchased? And he said, 2 5-gallon gas cans and a cigarette lighter.
Why would she need gas cans?
That's what we didn't know. That's what we had to try to find out.
The detective became more curious after he subpoenaed her cell phone records.
The phone records were blank from 3 o'clock on Saturday till 7 o'clock on Sunday.
Blank as in the phone wasn't used?
The phone was not used during that 27-hour period. I didn't just have that period of time to look at. I had a period of time before that. There was no other blank periods of that length.
So she was regularly using her
She
phone.
was regularly using her phone. That period stood out.
And there was something else about Dana's story, that she drove west from Denver and went hiking in the mountains.
To get from Granby, where she said she hiked, the most direct route is through Rocky Mountain National Park, which has video at both ends at the guard gates.
I covered a murder there for Dateline. They record your vehicle.
Everyone that comes through there.
Was she on there?
We sent detectives out there, and they obtained the video from both ends of the park to make sure that she had not gone through there, and she hadn't.
So the detective figured Dana wasn't telling the truth about where she was. And Dana's account seemed even more wobbly after he got a call from one of her friends expressing concern. His name was Jeff. Jeff told the detective Dana had asked him to help out with her attorney's fees following the murders. But first he wanted to know more.
He's asking her questions like I would ask. You know, where were you? Can you prove that you weren't involved in this? She said, I left Saturday and went for a drive in the mountains, and I didn't come back till Sunday night. And he said, well, you got a hotel receipt or something? And she says, no, I slept in my car. Okay, well, did you see anybody? Did you see the fires that were out there?
Like big fires?
Big forest fires.
So she says she's sleeping in her car, but there's forest fires around the area?
Yeah.
Jeff was skeptical, and so was Detective Voley. Because Dana told him she spent Saturday night in her Denver apartment and left for the mountains on Sunday morning. He started putting the pieces together: a shifting alibi, an off-the-grid cell phone, and 2 gas cans. And he had a huge light bulb moment.
She could get to Topeka and out of Kansas without stopping for gas.
Instead of heading west to go hiking, what if Dana really drove more than 500 miles east on I-70 to Kansas to kill Mike and Karen?
This is the highway that you think Dana Chandler took to get to Topeka from Denver?
Yes.
You had a feeling that even though Dana Chandler had the gas cans, she may have stopped somewhere along the way between Denver and Topeka, perhaps to use the restroom.
I thought it was a possibility that she would have. And just to cover our bases, I sent a couple detectives on I-70 and hitting every gas station, convenience store along I-70 to try to find video or any evidence that she had been in any of those places.
You're trying to catch her driving to Topeka.
Yes.
None of the gas stations had security camera video of Dana or her car. But about halfway along the route, in Kansas, the detective got lucky.
There was a clerk that was 70% sure that she had seen Dana on Saturday night, which would have been appropriate to the time it took her to travel from Denver to Topeka.
Are they showing a photo then?
They showed her a photo, and she said, yeah, that lady looks familiar. I think she stopped here.
Still, he knew he needed more.
Was there anything at all that placed her in Topeka during the window of the murders?
As far as physical evidence, no.
That's a challenge for you.
Yes.
You had no DNA, no fingerprints,
Right.
no solid evidence placing Dana Chandler in Topeka, no murder weapon,
Right.
no confession, no eyewitness seeing her go into the house, none of that.
Right. It doesn't mean she wasn't there. It just we haven't found the physical evidence.
2 months after the murders, he dropped in on Dana's close friend, Anne. You get a surprise visit at work.
Right, from Detective Voley and another plainclothes detective. They had told me that Mike and his fiancée had been murdered.
Up to this point, all you knew was that Mike was dead, and that was it. And now it's a double homicide?
Right.
And Dana might be involved?
Right.
What is your reaction as you're hearing this?
I was shocked. I said, no way did she do this. I couldn't even imagine that she had anything to do with it. I didn't see a mean bone in her body. I had been friends with Dana for years, and it was shocking. I just couldn't believe it.
It would take more than 2 decades to put the whole story together. After secrets crawled out into the open.
I had been recording our conversations.
And danger never seemed far away.
Did you worry your mom might try to seek revenge on you?
Absolutely.
I'm sure your stomach is turning.
Yes.
Yeah, it was sickening. It was crushing.
This is the mother-daughter showdown for the ages.
Absolutely.
Dana Chandler was now the focus of the investigation. Police weren't buying all of her alibi, especially where she said she'd traveled that weekend. And they were discovering more about her. According to Mike's family and friends, Dana did not move on after the divorce, and she wanted to make sure Mike didn't either. Caught in the middle was Mike's new love, Karen.
It started to get really, really bad. She would be in my office crying. She said it was just awful.
Linda said her friend would come to her with stories of Mike's out-of-control ex-wife.
Describe the phone calls that Karen would get.
They would typically be in the middle of the night and call, hang up, call, hang up, call, hang up, call and say horrible, vile things, call Karen names.
Karen began to wonder if her relationship with Mike could survive.
She loved Mike, but she didn't know if she could live with someone being that intrusive into their lives and manipulative.
Did she think about breaking up with Mike?
She shared with some of us that she didn't know if she could do this.
Investigators learned that type of behavior had gone on for years, that Dana even sent graphic messages about Mike and Karen's sex life to her daughter, had called Karen a tramp.
I just said, I don't want to hear about this. Why are you bringing me into this? But I just knew that she did not like Karen at all. And she just was really angry at my dad. She would verbally attack my dad in public. And it would happen at soccer games.
The school play?
Yeah.
So people are seeing this.
Yeah. It's really embarrassing.
The movie Fatal Attraction really comes to mind when you think about some of the actions of your mom.
Yeah, it didn't seem real. It was just hard to comprehend.
Karen's son thought Dana couldn't accept her ex having a new relationship.
She just, I guess, couldn't handle the fact that he didn't care for her anymore.
And Mike's sister said she too witnessed some of Dana's behavior during a stay at his house.
It must have been 1 or 2 in the morning. I'd woken up and the light was on out back, and we opened the blinds, and it was Dana jumping on the trampoline. The trampoline was near the house, so we could hear it, and then she just started laughing hysterically.
She says Mike also told her about a chilling incident that happened a few weeks before the killings.
Mike came home one day after work, and the kids were still in school, and found her sitting in his breezeway that had been locked with a cup of coffee. And he said, "What are you doing here?" "I'm calling 911. And she said, No, wait a minute. The kids are both at ages where they really need us. I think we should get back together." Just very calmly. And he said, "Are you kidding me?"
For Mike, the strange encounter cemented something he'd been thinking about for some time.
He called me right after. He said, "I'm marrying Karen."
Then, just days before the murders, on that fishing trip with his brother-in-law, Mike shared a chilling premonition.
Mike said, "When I'm gone, please make sure that the kids are raised properly and have what they need." I said, "Are you really serious?" He said, "Yes, something's going to happen. When Dana finds out that Karen and he were going to marry, that's going to be the trigger." And that was the last time I saw him alive.
Karen's son suspected Dana from the beginning.
I knew who did it. I mean, I said I know that this is that crazy psychopath Dana Chandler that did it.
The detective felt he had built a solid case against Dana. There was her harassing behavior, her suspicious cell records, and the witness along I-70 who thought she saw Dana the night of the murders.
She's a good witness.
She's a really good witness, yes.
Still, the local district attorney didn't think the case was provable beyond a reasonable doubt.
The DA didn't think everything you'd gathered was enough.
They didn't believe there was enough evidence to take it to court.
How frustrating was that for you?
Even though I knew in my heart we were on the right track, the DA didn't agree, so we keep moving forward.
Months would turn into years. Then a setback. That key witness, the gas station clerk, passed away.
Does this become a cold case, or do you say, I'm not giving up, I'm going to keep searching for that evidence that the DA needs?
I made a promise to Karen's dad when he wasn't convinced that the investigation was progressing fast enough or far enough. I said, I've got 12 years before I retire. I will have this case that whole 12 years. Nobody else is going to get it. It's going to be mine.
During the long wait, Mike's daughter found her days filled with regret.
I was wrestling so badly with the guilt that I had from being so terrible to my dad and never being able to say I was sorry. And I just wanted to do something to redeem myself.
And she started having uncomfortable thoughts about her mom.
I really wanted to find out who did it. And I needed to know if it was my mom.
You put your detective hat on.
Yeah, I did.
Haley was about to go undercover.
It was completely my plan.
It was 2005, 3 years after the murders, and there had been no arrest.
I think that Detective Voley had his whole heart in solving this murder, but he couldn't do it by himself.
For you, it felt like the murders fell through the cracks.
Yeah.
Without answers, Haley found herself asking the toughest question of all.
Did your mind go there that could my mom be capable of doing this? Is that possible?
Yeah, it did. It was hard to believe that my mom would actually kill them, but I couldn't think of anyone else who would have done it.
By then, she was living in Colorado with her boyfriend, Chris, and was more determined than ever to find out what happened to her dad and Karen. So she embarked on a bold new approach to investigate her mom herself.
Are the police involved at all? Have they asked you to?
It was completely my plan. I came up with the idea myself.
A fire was lit.
Yeah.
Haley, just 20 years old, began secretly recording conversations with her mother.
Take us to this moment where you first decide to record your mom.
I had already been talking to her from time to time, and I questioned her about it. I really wanted the truth. Recording it wasn't hard.
Was this over the phone? Did you meet somewhere?
So I really only had a recorder for my phone, so I would record our phone conversations.
Honestly, like throughout all this, it just seems like you don't want to help. Hey, I had no involvement. I have no idea what your dad and Karen were doing when they were involved.
In a span of about 4 years, Haley made 6 recordings. At times, it was clear she was torn.
I want things to be normal. You're my mom. No, I just need to hear what had nothing to do with it. Okay?
I'm not going to make her say anything. She's going to say what she's going to say. I'm just recording it. I'm asking legitimate questions.
One of Haley's first probing questions was one also gnawing at the detective. Why did her mom buy those gas cans?
You had a couple gas cans, Mom. I mean, it's that question right there. Help me get beyond that. I don't want to be there.
Her mom told her something she'd never said before. She got the gas cans as a favor to a woman at AA.
What was her name? Can get a hold of her? I mean, if she could say that would just be awesome. Karen, I have no idea. No. And I wish that I would have gotten her name, but I didn't.
I was encouraging her to try to prove she didn't do it. And her best convincing evidence that she didn't do it was, Haley, just believe me.
What about her phone?
I would ask her, why did your phone go unanswered?
What's going on with the cell phone? Haley, as far as my cell phone goes, was not able to pick up a signal in the mountains. Okay, so you went up to the mountains? Yes. Okay. I didn't have a signal.
You're trying to catch your mom in a trap.
That was definitely the gamble. I wasn't sure if it was even going to work.
But then you started to get somewhere.
Yeah.
Did you spend the night in the mountains then, like, that weekend?
She seemed to confirm she was in the mountains, which is what she told her friend Jeff. And that contradicted what she told Detective Voley, that she'd spent the night at her apartment. So Haley asked exactly where she was.
What city, like, where you in? Haley, I have all that information. That's where I was.
Are you buying this, what she's telling you?
I'm completely not buying it.
After months of secretly recording her mom, Haley let Detective Voley in on her operation. He jumped at the opportunity to get something solid on Dana. So he gave Haley a key fob with a voice recorder hidden inside. Haley met her mom at a restaurant and placed the fob on the table.
How nervous were you as you're recording her?
It was a little nerve-wracking.
It's barely audible due to the noisy restaurant. Haley put her mom on the spot.
At one point, I asked her to just take a polygraph test. That would be one step to show that she didn't do it. And she asked me if I'd ever thought about killing my dad. And I said, no, but she said, well, I have thought about killing him.
That's big.
Yeah. I mean, we can say in passing, like, oh, I could kill him, but to think about killing someone to the extent that you're worried it will show up on a polygraph test, that's pretty bad.
What did you think when you heard that?
That's just another one of those little pieces that we put into that pile of evidence that here she is on audio admitting that she thought about it.
Eventually, as Haley kept pressing her mom, Dana shut down.
My attorney has advised me not to talk to anybody about anything about that weekend. And I'm going to take his advice. Okay, I understand, but I don't understand why you can't tell me. I'm just wanting my mom back.
But Dana was dug in.
If I say something that doesn't agree with what my first statement was, then I'm changing my story, and I don't want to risk doing that either.
Dana had changed her story, and she left Haley and Detective Voley more convinced than ever that she'd committed the murders.
Haley definitely catches her in some inconsistencies.
Yeah, the inconsistencies on the gas can, that was big. So just saying, yeah, I thought about it, that's important. That gives us some something in Dana's own words.
It may have been important, but without a confession, it wasn't enough for the DA to take the case. In 2007, 5 years after the murders, Voley was promoted to sergeant and was transferred out of the detective squad. But he didn't give up hope that something or someone would change his luck. And one day, out of the blue, a stranger approached him.
It's going to change everything about this. Everything.
It certainly does.
I don't know how you'd move on without closure, without resolution, without justice, is what it was for me. It wasn't right.
It was 2008, and Haley was starting to lose hope. But what she didn't know was that Sergeant Voley's chance encounter with a stranger would forever change the trajectory of the case. The man was campaigning to be the new DA.
And I said, good luck to you. If you happen to make it, I've got a case I want to present to you. It's the Harkness-Cisco case. He says, I know about it. I'm going to start a cold case unit, and we're going to look at that.
And he got elected.
He was elected. He did start the cold case unit. This was the first case that he looked at. We looked at it for 2 years, just shoring it up as much as we possibly could until they were comfortable that there was enough evidence there to bring it to court.
What do you think changed?
Perspective in part of it. This one says, if I lose, I lose. But I'm going to go down swinging.
The DA called us in and said, we have, I think, as much as we're ever going to have. Do you want us to charge her and go to trial? Yes. I mean, no hesitation for me.
Is there any conflicting feelings there that you're pushing for your mom to be arrested?
I was really scared because she was going to find out that I had been recording our conversations. So arresting her and taking her to trial was great.
You're terrified of the one woman who is supposed to love you the most in this world.
Absolutely.
Dana Chandler was living in Oklahoma at the time. It was 2011, nearly a decade since Mike and Karen had been killed. Authorities caught up with her in a parking lot and arrested her with guns drawn. She was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder. Dana pleaded not guilty and went on trial in a Topeka courtroom in March 2012.
We're covering this around the clock every day.
Sherman Smith is editor-in-chief of the Kansas Reflector, covering state politics. Back then, he was an editor for the Topeka Capital Journal.
One of the reasons why the community fixated on this so much was because, it involved a couple of community members in a relatively safe neighborhood, and that just doesn't really happen much in Topeka.
The prosecution argued Dana was the only person who hated Mike and Karen enough to kill them.
The motive has always been that Dana Chandler was so bitter about the failure of her marriage. She despised her ex-husband and despised even more that he was going to be married again.
To prove motive, prosecutors called friends and family, including Haley, who was by then 27.
What's that like, going to trial knowing that you'll be helping the prosecution try to put away your mother?
It was terrifying. And it was very awkward. And it was hard to not feel like you are doing something totally wrong and betraying your mom. But I was only doing what was right.
If you believe she did this, then she has to pay.
Yeah. I wanted the jury to know how much she hated them, what she put them through, and
Karen and Mike.
Yeah.
The prosecutor said Mike was scared of Dana and got a protection from abuse order against her, which she violated. The defense countered that there was no physical evidence tying Dana to the crime scene. It took less than 90 minutes for the jury to find her guilty of both counts of first-degree murder. She was given 2 life sentences.
I was glad for the family. The work I did on the case was shown to be good, so I was happy about that. But still, you're not jumping for joy after somebody gets convicted of a murder because nobody wins.
There weren't any winners that day at all, but we were relieved. To tell you the truth, we were relieved.
Haley, who was just a teenager when her father was killed, says she felt almost reborn.
I felt like my life was starting. That was behind me. And this was the new, fresh start, a new beginning. Chris and I got married and we started having kids, and it was great.
Sergeant Voley, who had fulfilled his promise to Karen's dad to never give up on the case, retired in 2014. But this fresh start for all of them came to a screeching halt.
You get some news that's going to rock your world.
Yeah. The Kansas Supreme Court overturned the conviction.
In 2018, 6 years after the trial, the state's highest court ruled the prosecutor had misled the jury about that protection from abuse order. It never existed, and the prosecutor knew it. Both murder convictions were tossed.
For me, it felt like the Supreme Court was doing the right thing. That it had become abundantly clear that there were a lot of problems with the way this was prosecuted.
Haley knew that if the state chose not to re-prosecute the case, her mother would walk free.
Did you worry your mom might try to seek revenge on you, given that you testified against her the first time?
I was terrified if she would get out of jail. And I had kids now.
Yeah, could she harm one of your children?
Yeah.
Was that a fear?
Harming them or just trying to see them in general.
The fate of Dana Chandler's case was in the hands of Mike Kage, the 3rd district attorney to oversee it.
What was your biggest concern going in, deciding to retry this?
Just making sure we made the right decision. We look at the case itself and try and decide what's the right thing here. Does justice demand that we move forward?
Kage believed it did. Dana Chandler would remain behind bars until her retrial. Her case and her cause began attracting attention.
No DNA, no confession, no fingerprint, not even snitch witnesses.
Daryl Burton is the founder of a nonprofit organization called Miracle of Innocence. Its mission is to help those who may have been wrongly accused.
And this is based on your own personal experience.
Yes.
You were wrongfully accused.
Yes, wrongfully accused and faced the death penalty and sent to prison for nearly 25 years for a crime that I didn't commit.
Convicted of murder in 1985 and exonerated in 2008, Daryl believed Dana's case mirrored his own. To him, the lack of physical evidence spoke volumes.
You cannot find a case where you would investigate all of these different, avenues and not find something, some connection. It just doesn't happen.
I think that's what makes this so complicated, is that Dana looks so bad with her behavior towards her ex and his new girlfriend. Yeah. But then there's that, where's the smoking gun?
It don't have to be a smoking gun. It could just be a water pistol, anything.
Lack of evidence aside, do you believe Dana Chandler is innocent?
I do. I believe she's innocent in my heart of hearts.
His organization hired a top-notch defense team to represent Dana in her high-stakes retrial. What would this new jury think?
I'm sure your stomach is turning.
Yes.
In August 2022, Dana Chandler stood trial for a second time for the murders of Mike Cisco and Karen Harkness 20 years earlier. Prosecutor Charles Kitt acknowledged the evidence the state didn't have.
This case is not based on DNA. This case is not based on hair. This case is not based on fingerprints. This case is based on jealousy, rage, and obsession.
The prosecution's case remained largely unchanged from the first trial. Haley once again took the stand.
Seeing your mom this time around, did it feel different at all?
My mom looked so different. I mean, she'd been in jail for 11 years, and it was still hard to see her. But, you know, time had passed, and I had grown, and so I think it was a little bit easier.
She really obsessed over him. And
she told the jury how her mom seemed perversely fixated on her dad and Karen.
It was a big part of my conversations with her was, where's your dad? What's he doing? And your dad did this to me, and bad talking him and Karen.
And did that continue up until his death?
Yeah.
But the prosecution told the jury it wasn't just what Dana said, it was also what she did, like showing up in Topeka unannounced or incessantly calling Mike and Karen.
He was distraught.
Mike's brother-in-law Mark testified about Mike's growing concern over what his ex-wife might be capable of.
Mike told me that the patterns of harassment had increased and that he feared for he and Karen's lives.
And the state argued Dana's changing alibis for the weekend of the murders were full of holes. A weekend in which her cell phone went dark for more than 24 hours. Perhaps the most chilling testimony came from Dana's friend Ann Hammer. She now believed Dana was guilty and told the jury about a road trip Dana said she took about a month before the murders.
She told me that she had driven to Kansas. She told me that she knew nobody was in the house and that she went into Mike's home through the window. After that, she did go to his girlfriend's house and sat outside her house waiting for them to come home, but they didn't show up.
Did you think that Dana's story about the drive was possibly a dry run for what she ended up being accused of?
That's absolutely what I did think of it. She's just practicing.
May it please the court.
But Dana Chandler's defense attorney, Tom Bath, reminded the jury of the glaring holes in the prosecution's case.
In 20 years, the state had no evidence whatsoever that placed Dana Chandler in Karen Harkness's home, in the city of Topeka, or in the state of Kansas. And that hasn't changed.
The defense argued this was a classic example of a botched investigation led by a detective with tunnel vision.
Vogley essentially started on this path right from the start.
When they get their mind fixed on a suspect, that's almost like you can get a bullseye every time. You know how you get a bullseye every time? Where you stick the arrow in the tree and you just draw a circle around it.
Daryl Burton attended the trial to support Dana.
And I think that's what they did with Dana. You know, he said, we got this person, and we're going to build our case around this person.
The defense highlighted Vogley's many missteps, hammering him on cross-examination about the parts of the investigation he failed to document.
Did you do a report on this?
No.
You didn't even do any notes about what Dana said, did you?
No.
Right.
And taking him to task for the things he did document that later went missing.
Where is that tape, detective?
I don't know.
As for that dry run, the defense pressed Dana's old friend on her memory.
And do you remember that some of the information you gave about Dana, you weren't sure if it was true or if it was a dream?
Absolutely.
The defense argued the rest of the prosecution's case was just noise. Dana wasn't angry or obsessed and never harassed Mike or Karen. All those phone calls, for instance, just a mom trying to reach her kids. And so what if her cell phone went dark for 27 hours? This was 2002. service was limited, roaming charges were sky high, and people weren't tied to their phones like they are today.
2002 was a different era for cell phones. Many people's phone would not show calls if you left.
For the defense, I think they were just kind of throwing their arms in the air going, just because she can't prove she was in Colorado doesn't mean she was in Kansas. There's no evidence she was there either.
And in fact, said the defense, there was evidence someone else was in that house. A hair found on a shell casing did not match Dana or either of the victims.
There is reasonable doubt at every turn, and we ask you to return a verdict, not guilty, not proven. Thank you.
Jury deliberations started after 3 weeks of testimony. 1 day passed, then another, then another. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4. This is going on almost a week.
That wasn't good. We knew
good.
it wasn't good.
I'm sure your stomach, is turning. You're getting a bad feeling here.
Yes.
On the 6th day of deliberations, the jury filed back into the courtroom.
I understand that the jury is unable to reach a unanimous verdict at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The judge declared a mistrial.
All right, thank you very much.
And the families found themselves right back where they started.
Oh, it hurts.
You've already done 1 and then now 2, and then now you have this lack of resolution.
It's a roller coaster. Yeah.
Definitely a roller coaster.
And there was no getting off as the case careened towards a 3rd trial. And this time, all bets were off.
There is a big, big twist coming that you did not see coming.
Wow. Shocking.
This is the mother-daughter showdown for the ages.
Absolutely.
In the fall of 2022, despite 2 trials behind them, prosecutors decided to roll the dice again and try Dana Chandler for a 3rd time. The victims' families were relieved, but the long wait for trial wouldn't be easy. Dana was granted bond.
So now she's out. You've testified against your mom twice, and now she's a free woman.
I was really nervous about her getting out on bond. I felt better because she was supposed to stay in Kansas and she'd have an ankle monitor, but still, I knew it was nothing for her to drive any distance.
Karen's friend Linda was anxious too.
Several of us, the very first trial, when we testified against her, we said, if she gets off, I'm a little concerned.
The prosecutor's decision to retry Dana was a major disappointment for her friend Daryl. He vowed to stick by her and for the next 2.5 years continued to raise money to keep lawyer Tom Bath on the case.
How are you feeling heading into trial number 3?
I was feeling she had a good chance. And I said to Dana, I said, Dana, I said, Tom is likable. I said, if he gets in front of a jury, they're going to like him.
Dana's 3rd trial began this past February in a county northwest of Topeka. The courthouse was different, but the players were the same. Until, minutes before opening statements, Dana made a stunning decision. She fired her attorneys. Dana would represent herself.
She really flips the switch on this one.
Yeah, that was a blind side.
Even her staunchest supporters were dumbfounded.
I said, Dana, I don't understand. What are you trying to do? What are you doing? You're not a lawyer. You need an attorney to understand court rules, procedures, and court etiquette. Darryl, this is my life. This is my case, and I think I can help myself.
Counsel, are you ready to begin?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Prosecutors argued their now familiar case. Same motive.
That this defendant was obsessed with Mike and Karen, that she hated Mike and Karen, that she told Haley that she had thought about killing Mike.
And the same disturbing stories.
Phone harassment, rapid fire phone calls, stalking, showing up.
I looked out the blinds of his bedroom, and it was the defendant jumping on a trampoline and laughing.
When it was Dana's turn, everyone knew they were in for something different. And sure enough, she threw the typical trial playbook out the window. For her first witness, Dana called herself speaking in a monologue about herself.
Start by stating my name. My name is Dana Chandler. I, as everyone knows, have been accused of double homicide, and I am innocent. I did not kill Mike and Karen.
With her sisters and other supporters looking on, Dana told the jury she was a woman who'd been dealt a bad hand. She said her ex-husband left her impoverished and shut out of her children's lives, and she'd endured a lonely battle against alcoholism. Yes, she said some of her behavior was ugly, like those graphic messages she'd sent Haley about her dad and Karen's sex life. But that was the alcohol talking.
I mean, seriously, Haley was 14 years old. I am just so ashamed and embarrassed about that, and I hate it that I put Haley through that. It is.
She took the blame for that, but not for all the rest. She said she was actually getting along with Mike at the time of the murders, and that all those damning stories told by Mike and Karen's families were either misrepresented or never happened.
There's been testimony that I used Haley and Dustin to spy on Mike. I stalked Mike. None of that's true.
And Dana said she hadn't changed her alibi about where she was the night of the murders. She'd slept in her car in the Colorado mountains.
This is a map of the route that I took.
As Dana moved around the courtroom, she didn't always come across like a polished attorney. She struggled with her computer.
As soon as I unplug it, it starts dragging.
Stopped testimony to put on her puffy coat. And she complained about our cameras.
That camera back there is daylight. I find that very distasteful. I'm sitting here giving my life story with that camera pointing to me is so obnoxious to me. And I'm very uncomfortable doing that right now.
Did you worry that the jury might be sympathetic to her or think, wow, this woman is taking on this burden of being her own attorney? Maybe she didn't do this.
Yeah, it concerned me a little bit. I thought, yeah, it's possible she could be seen as sympathetic to the jury.
Of course, the fact that Dana was her own attorney meant that she got to question every witness herself, including the man she felt had tormented her for 20 years, Detective Voley.
Morning.
Good morning.
Dana worked him over on the stand, pressing him on every move he made during the investigation.
She was asking him questions that either he didn't recall or refused to acknowledge and answer. And then she would approach him with some documents, reports that he had prepared.
Well, I can see that it's not accurate because I've obviously made an error on that.
It was coming across as effective.
She used a note he'd written to portray him as a man desperate to solve the case, not for justice, but to protect his reputation, an allegation he denied.
You were feeling a great deal of pressure to solve this crime.
I always feel a great deal of pressure to solve any murder.
To the point to where you were concerned that the perceived problem that the crime had not properly been investigated would fall on you.
That memo lacks context.
Yet even though he turned her life upside down, Dana said the detective still couldn't produce a single piece of direct evidence that tied her to the crime.
Were there my fingerprints in the house?
No.
Were there any of my hair in the house?
No.
Was there any DNA in the house?
No.
He never found evidence that she owned or knew how to use a gun either.
What was that like, having your murder suspect keeping you on the stand for 2 days, just line by line of all your work? I mean, the tables have turned. She's now interviewing you.
The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife.
Being questioned by Dana was equally surreal for Mark and Kathy.
What was bizarre for me was I was getting a drink of water when she came to cross-examine me, and I hear this. And she's trying to put on this persona that we're old friends.
Dana accused you of having mental health issues.
Yes.
Isn't it true that you're bipolar? You've been diagnosed bipolar?
No, it's not true.
It was demented.
But the person who dreaded the face-to-face with Dana most was her daughter.
Knowing that I was going to have to get up on the stand and be questioned by her was like upsetting my stomach to have to talk to her.
What was your strategy with her, your approach, knowing that your mom's playing the role of attorney?
I put on my game face. I remember right before I went in to testify, I remembered like a soccer pep talk that my dad gave me as a kid to get ready for the big game. Because I needed to be my best. And I needed to be ready for a fight. And just like, I can do this, you know? And I remember reminding myself where I stand. I wanted the truth. I'm telling the truth, and I'm doing the right thing. And I'm not moving.
Well, Lucille?
If Haley was Dana's child, you couldn't tell. She attacked Haley's memories, suggesting Mike was the unhinged parent after the divorce, not her.
When your dad and Karen drove up, your dad stormed over to the car, right?
Oh,
if you
no.
recall?
No, he did not.
And he started banging on the window.
What?
Right?
No, he did not.
And I'm like, no, that did not happen. She was making things up.
I felt like you all.
And she made Haley revisit disagreements they'd had in the past, laying bare their fractured relationship for the jury.
Is this a good setting to explain our personal relationship?
Well, that's a lot of what this trial is about, is my relationship with you.
Despite their problems, Dana insisted she tried to be there for Haley after her father was killed.
But I did try to call you, was your testimony.
You did.
And you wouldn't answer your phone.
Yeah, I didn't want to talk to you.
You didn't want to talk to me. But I tried to talk to you, correct?
Yes.
How do you feel you did?
I feel really good. I did great.
Did you feel like your dad was with you?
I do.
Dana Chandler had had her say. Now, prosecutors would have a chance to question her. A double murder case that began on a 4th of July weekend was about to end with its own fireworks.
Ms. Chandler,
Sports page.
it is a yes or no.
I'm not going to be corralled into this little box of yes or no, Mr. Kid.
Dana Chandler had conducted her defense her way.
I think this case is a character assassination.
But the decision to represent herself came at a cost. There were constant delays as Dana sifted through documents and corralled her witnesses. She tested the judge's patience.
Mr. Chandler, I'm going to ask you to stop talking right now unless you really have something, you have a motion to make.
I'm just exercising my right to be heard.
By contrast, the prosecutors moved their case along like clockwork.
They know what they're doing. They've got their witnesses in order. They've all been briefed. Everybody's on the same page. Yes.
The prosecution took advantage of Dana's inexperience at key moments. Remember the gas station clerk who believed she saw Dana in Kansas the weekend of the murders? Because that woman died, the judge had ruled her story inadmissible. But Dana asked the detective a question that allowed him to talk about it.
We also have, and it hasn't been mentioned yet, a Patty Williams in Waukene, Kansas.
The prosecutor played the revelation for all it was worth, showing the jury how the clerk had identified Dana in a photo lineup.
So she looked at this lineup of 6 photographs for about 10 seconds?
Yes.
And what did she say?
She pointed to the person in position 4 on the lineup and said she was about 70% sure that the woman in 4 was the woman that had been in the store.
The prosecution, I mean, these guys, they were literally running circles around Dana.
Well, they've been to law school. They've tried many cases. This is their life, their job. It's not Dana's job.
Right, and she's never tried a case ever, in her life.
The prosecutor also had a chance to do something he'd been wanting to do for years, question Dana on the stand. By testifying, she'd put herself in that precarious spot.
I'm ready for cross.
The prosecutor asked Dana a series of yes or no questions and called her out when she refused to comply.
Ms. Chandler, is it fair to say you don't like the rules when they apply to you?
No, that's not true at all.
The rule is, when you're asked a question, answer that question and then wait for the next question. Do you understand that?
That is what what you're asking me is not necessary, and I understand you're trying to corral me, keep me on a short leash, yes or no. I understand the tactic.
But you're not capable of doing that?
He took aim at her alibi and got her to admit that she had told different stories about that weekend.
So what you told Detective Foley is not consistent with what you told Jeff Bailey, is it?
As far as my trip to...
Miss Chandler, it's not consistent
that
with what you
part, okay, yeah, I would agree with that.
The prosecutor also pointed out the sheer number of witnesses who Dana said hadn't told the truth about her.
Tim Sisko and Kathy Boots were wrong about saying Mike saw you in his breezeway in May, approximately 6 weeks before the homicide. Is that correct?
Yes, they are absolutely wrong.
Kathy was mistaken or wrong on her testimony about seeing you jump on Mike's trampoline.
It's inaccurate that happened, absolutely.
Haley and Dustin were wrong when they said that you used them as your little spies. Yes or no?
Yes, I was not using them as my little spies.
How do you think she did on cross-examination?
She didn't do too good. The whole trial was just painful. It's like you sitting on the shoreline and you're watching someone drown. You throw them a life preserve and they throw it back. It was just painful.
When both sides rested and the case went to the jury, Mark and Kathy were optimistic. Are you feeling good?
Yeah, I felt very confident.
I was feeling great.
And they wouldn't have to wait long for the decision. 3.5 hours after deliberations began, everyone gathered in the courtroom for the verdict.
We, the jury, find Dana Chandler guilty of murder in the first degree as charged in count 1.
The jury comes back guilty.
Yeah, guilty.
Does it feel even better this time around because of everything you've been through, that maybe this is final now?
Yes. This time with her representing herself, exposing herself with all of her stories, I feel it is over. It's fully out there. Everyone knows what happened.
Karen's son Chad was also grateful it was over.
I was elated and just felt peace and calm and even some tears of joy.
On the other side of the aisle, Daryl was despondent.
How did that feel when you see Dana being cuffed and led away after weeks of fighting?
Yeah, it was sickening. It was crushing, devastated. She turned and she looked at her family and she blew them a kiss. And then, the sheriff took her out the back door.
23 years after Mike and Karen were killed, their families are just starting to get used to life after Dana Chandler. But for Karen's daughter, Erin, the pain of her mother's death is never far away.
As heartbroken as I am for my loss, what literally brings me to my knees is the fact that our two amazing sons will never know a life or a world with her in it.
Haley feels that ache too. She was just a teen when she lost her father. Now, she's a mother of 3.
I'm sure he would have made a great grandpa to your kids.
He would have made the best grandpa to my kids. And Karen would have been a great grandma too.
I think your dad would be proud of you for all that you've done to fight for him.
I hope my dad's proud of me. That's all I wanted.
That's all for this edition of Dateline. And check out our Talking Dateline podcast. Andrea Canning and Keith Morrison will go behind the scenes of tonight's episode, available Wednesday in the Dateline feed wherever you get your podcasts. And starting this weekend, in addition to Fridays and Saturdays, you can tune into Dateline Sundays at 10, 9 Central. We'll see you then. I'm Lester Holt. For all of us at NBC News, good night.
There's been an attempted murder at a convenience store in Yorkshire. One man has been shot. He's in hospital, undergoing emergency care.
Good evening, CSI Control.
Sarah Victor, Zero, go ahead.
The jobs that we get called to tend to be the more horrific cases, things like murder, attempt murder, jobs involving firearms, kidnap and extortion.
Yes, I have got a CSI available.
Martin Jefferson is the on-call area forensic manager this evening.
The CSI or CSI supervisor will manage that crime scene. They'll get their scene suits on, and then it'll be a matter of going in and then making an initial assessment. Because up until that point, we will have witness accounts. We might, if we're lucky, have a bit of CCTV. We'll have information from the first attending officers, and that will most likely be it. So we need to know exactly what there is there. The evidence that we collect can be key to an investigation. It can identify a suspect, place a suspect at the scene. It can give us a sequence of events.
The CSIs are looking for anything alien to the scene. In this case, that means ballistics evidence.
Is there a shotgun cartridge, for example, on the floor?
We'll get a few out here as well. That's part of the warding. Yeah. It's just to get a bit of a sample. Are there any more up there? Yeah, that's part. Yeah, you can actually see the shot on that. Got a few extra bits. Yeah.
You saw them down here, I didn't know, sorry.
Is there evidence of pellet damage or a projectile damage, depending what kind of firearm you've got? And they'll be feeding all that back to me.
Well, there's plenty of bits of shot, isn't it? So that's good. Yeah. That one. Yeah. From there, you
outside.
can see the you can
I mean,
see
it's they've gone in it and then through it and out outside.
Yeah, and done these and then that.
The CSIs are joined at scene by a member of the imaging unit, who arrives to forensically retrieve the shop's CCTV.
Yeah, wouldn't mind seeing this one again.
I can slow it down.
It's quite low.
Yeah.
He comes in more than I thought, actually.
And then afterwards, I just want to see if that's when you go.
Right, okay. Just keep it playing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Unless he's done it and angled it upwards from here.
Yeah.
He must have been stood right there then.
The CCTV video shows you something's come out of that weapon, but is it something that could have caused a lethal injury, or is it something else? Is it almost a blank fire that you just see a flash from? We've got to link any damage, any projectiles, ballistic evidence back to identify that individual within that scene and what type of firearms used.
So the system's up in the ceiling space, so I'm going to take the hard drive out. I'll then take that back to our lab and secure it for later viewing. I'll clip a small section when I get back, and I'll be leaving that for investigators in the morning, for the early team that come on, and then they can run with that.
Pull through it.
Well, that's what I was wondering, whether it was from inside or outside.
Yes, we found the drive. Yes, it's detected, so that's everything from that CCTV system. I'll try download that now for you, if that's easier, if you guys want it tonight. All right, mate, cheers. Everyone's got a TV, everyone's consuming media, but, you scratch under the surface of that, and there's a lot of stuff underneath, a lot of forensic data that you can use in investigations.
Detective Superintendent Emma Winfield has been assigned this case. She is given a walkthrough of the scene. She'll meet with the area forensic manager to develop a forensic strategy around this attempted murder.
You better appears to touch him. And then you can see some damage on these. victim's blood going through.
Yeah. How far back does the blood go? Oh, it goes all the way through, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we know suspect's not come inside, so it's all victim's blood.
Yeah.
We're linked in with HMET throughout the inquiry. They see us as an intrinsic part of their investigation.
Both the suspect and the gun are still at large. They need to be found, and quickly.
There's always that chance that they may come back. They may think they've got unfinished business.
The offence is attempt murder and possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life. Section 6.
It's the morning after the shooting, and detectives are gathered to hear Senior Investigating Officer Emma Winfield's account of the scene.
So, today...
She was given a forensic walkthrough of it by one of the crime scene investigators on the night of the incident.
Do we know if we've got that in the register?
I was notified at 23 minutes past 6 last night
that it appears to touch him.
Information that the male had blast injuries to the right side and then pepper injuries to his shoulders.
You can see some damage on these. There's the victim's blood.
Circumstances are that last night our victim has gone up to the store. He is friends with the store's owner's son. There's been some other people there and they've been laughing and joking. Short time later, the door was open. Our victim has been stood at the end of the counter. Suspect, described as wearing a balaclava and dark clothing, is seen to be with what's described as a long barrel shotgun. Makes words to the effect of, "Do you want it?" and fires twice. How far back does the blood go? Oh, it goes all the way through, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we know suspect's not come inside, so it's all victim's blood.
There's a lot of blood spatter at the scene, which is forensically assessed and photographed.
So we can weigh and everything, can't we?
Yeah.
From its patterns, a forensic biologist will be able to work out the sequence of events in the immediate aftermath of the shooting.
The only person hit has been our victim. It looks as though from the CCTV that he's probably stumbled back into the wine display. Right, because he seems to run that way, doesn't he? He then goes round back of one of the other aisles and into like a storage area and a toilet area where he's losing his blood.
Ripped some things and then it's come down there as well.
And then he goes out of the property towards that car, which is parked outside on the path, tries to get in there. There's some blood splattering outside, he's unable to get in that car, and then ARVs come. Our victim is at LGI currently with officers. He'll say that it didn't believe he was the intended victim. He's got no issues with anybody. We'll assess today whether or not we can do a video interview with him or a statement. Looking at the scene and that area of the shop is quite tight. Whoever was in that direction was at risk of being hit.
At this stage in the investigation, all detectives have to go on is a claim that the incident could be related to the theft of an e-bike.
As we're starting to find out further information, and the circumstances are that a white male and blonde-haired female went into the shop on Thursday making inquiries about an e-bike which had been stolen and was concerned that it had been outside. The store's owner will say that he put his son on the phone so they could speak directly about the bike. He'd warned him about he didn't want any trouble at his shop, and then the male has returned on the Friday about a similar time, about 4 to 5 o'clock.
But how has this led to attempted murder? Detectives begin reviewing the shop's CCTV footage from the last week.
So the person that we've got coming into the store here with the black puffer jacket on, and then he has a conversation with the shop owner asking for his son's mobile number, which he then rings as he leaves the store. And this is supported by telecoms data that we've also obtained. That times in nicely with him making that phone call to the son.
The store's owner's son at 17:06 got a call from number ending 57. The son has had a conversation with what he described as an unknown male and said he'd come down to the shop to sort it out. The son rang the male at 17:29 to say he was at the shop, and about 10 minutes later, that's when balaclavaed male has turned up.
So the male just entering there, blurry camera, walks in, discharge, and then he's left the shop. So all that happens within 7 seconds. Walks out the store and goes off to the right, but we're unable to ascertain whether he gets into a vehicle at that point from that particular camera because it doesn't cover the street wide enough.
CCTV, there are CCTV opportunities, but apart from the shop, we were unable to secure that last night.
Teams are sent out to the area to gather as much CCTV as possible in a bid to track down where the shooter went after he left the shop, and even how he might have arrived.
A lot of the footage that we obtain will be from residential premises as we follow the potential routes that he could have taken. So we have a CCTV coordinator.
What about that junction?
Who will look at what we call pinch points. So we will look at junctions and obtain footage from there. 2 cameras. And see if we can see an individual on foot or look for vehicles that pass at what we would deem a relevant time, as in leaving the store. And then we would track and trace.
And there's no bike seen there.
Householders are not required to show their CCTV footage to the police without a court order, and many who do have such footage do not hand it over.
There's definitely nothing else that looks out on here.
We go back up the street. It looks like there's 2 gunnels either side.
We're adjacent to where the firearms incident has taken place, and now further information, we're now tracking a gentleman on a mountain bike. At the moment, it's unidentified. So this house gives us a much clearer view of this area here, which will hopefully go forward and assist the investigation.
But can you get through that house?
With our laptops out on the ground, we're able to view the material we've obtained, which will hopefully give us a direction of travel. Oh, wait a minute. That's your bike. Right, this firearms discharge has taken place. Now we're bike going back. That's either someone running away scared or someone who's committed that offence. Actually, that's much faster, I think, as it goes away than what it was as it was coming in. If it's one of the same people, it's from a distance. It looks like a dark figure, which would match up with the dark figure of the clothing of the suspect who's committed this crime.
If he comes through here, I'm not sure if he can get through there, so he might have to go around.
You don't have any holes or gaps in the fence?
No.
Just on the right hand side here. What we do know from other people who have downloaded footage and started to view footage, they have picked up a mountain bike on their footage as well. So we know it's been captured at other locations away from here, and we now need to start piecing together what they've downloaded to make sure that we are on with the same bike, because there's plenty of offshoots of roads around here where that bike could have gone.
We've got him on a bike going up that way, so we've got him initially coming out of there. That comes out.
That's the only one now that we've not got downloaded. Right, so we can have a look at that and see what's what. All right, buddy.
While the CCTV inquiries continue, the investigation gets its first breakthrough. The theft of the e-bike, coupled with the phone calls to the shop owner's son asking about the whereabouts of the bike, puts a name in the frame.
So at 0058, I declared a suspect for this offence. My rationale being there'd been some intelligence, there'd been a burglary whereby electric e-bike had been stolen and £500.
The naming of a suspect enables the forensics team to deploy more of their resources.
Put a call into imaging, and the plan drawers were requested to plot everything within that scene. So they attend with 3D laser scanner, and they run that within the scene to plot what is present. From the CCTV footage, you see the suspect in the door. So with the plan drawing, the hope is that we can identify, or certainly give an indication of height and build for that individual from the scale of the door.
Just doing a 3D scan now, and what this is going to do is going to fire a laser beam. As it bounces back, it retrieves the physical data of the building, and then as we move along, it generates a 3D model, and then from this we can provide 2D floor plans. We've also been asked to potentially look at a height analysis. We combine the 3D data with the CCTV still imagery. We overlay them on top of each other and try to calculate the height of the suspect. It just gives us another piece of information to say that this suspect is this person at this particular moment in time.
So it's a SIM card.
The SIM card will show when the suspect used the phone, and this could help the investigating team track the suspect's movements in the days leading up to the attack.
Where's this? This is in-game.
SIM cards are here.
Between the scene and this other address. It's just great for pre-planning, isn't it, Rob?
The victim remains in hospital at Leeds General Infirmary.
I've just come back from seeing the victim in hospital. He has had an operation to move some pellets from the side of his face and jawline, and is due to have another operation to remove further pellets, and he has nerve damage in his lip. He's in a lot of pain, and he's obviously quite distressed and sort of traumatised really about what's happened to him.
I organised the victim to be photographed at hospital to show the extent of his injuries, where he's been shot, how far the shot has spread, so from that ballistics expert can tell us approximately how far away the fire has been stood. Forensic pathologists can potentially have a look at them and tell us how close to death our victim may have come, having been shot at close range with a shotgun. In this case, the victim sustained injuries to the right side of his face, shoulder and neck, and with a shotgun injury, what you get is multiple pellet strikes, because within your shotgun cartridge you've got a lot of shot. You don't just have one bullet like you would in a handgun. It's multiple pieces of shot that disperse. The fact we've got the CCTV showing it's a close range shot fired directly at an individual, and then the individual's injuries are to the head and neck and shoulder. You can't expect anything than killing someone if you're pointing a weapon at them. He's been very fortunate to survive this.
When he enters the store the first time, which is some 50 minutes before the discharge, you can see that there's a female in there with 2 young children. And having watched the footage from the shop for the period throughout that day, it's a very busy shop with a number of families, young children, people of all ages entering the store. Then what we've got is a male with no regard for who could be in there, and within 7 seconds is discharged a firearm that could have caused serious injury to a number of people. So it just showed a complete lack of concern for the safety of any individuals that would have been in that shop.
Suspect has previously been linked to firearms investigations, but he hasn't been convicted. Mr. Chesters has authorised a firearms response.
Firearms officers have been dispatched to the streets to try and find the suspect. They weren't at any of their known addresses, so the team have used police intelligence to track the suspect's movements. The suspect is spotted travelling in a car with someone else at the wheel. suspect has been identified in the convenience store attack, where the victim was shot at point-blank range. Along with another person, he is detained by firearms officers when their car is stopped and arrested on suspicion of attempted murder.
The vehicle was located whilst it was moving. It was stopped by the firearms officers. They will remove them from the vehicle. They'll be handcuffed, transported to a custody suite. He'll be given his rights, his entitlement to free, independent legal advice, and then we'll look to interview them today once they've been photographed, fingerprinted, booked in, and their clothing seized for forensic processing.
With the suspect now in custody, the forensics team are examining the car he was arrested in for any evidence that could link him to the offence.
So any vehicles relating to suspects or suspects' associates will get recovered to one of the West Yorkshire recovery garages where CSI will photograph the vehicle.
That could be from the shop maybe, a phone number on the back, so that could be worth seizing. Maybe that phone numbers could be in relation to the offenders, it could be fingerprinted.
We will also be looking for mobile phones.
Documentation about a phone to be cut off.
We'll be looking at any clothing within that car that links back to the suspect at the scene.
Looks like some woolen gloves or a balaclava that could be in the rear of front passenger seat. So I'll just photograph the location and then we can seize them. Obviously look under the boot compartment as well, see what's hiding under there. Back of seats, under car mats.
We'll be doing GSR tapings, so that's gunshot residue, any receipts to help us track back movements. It depends how it's linked to the suspect and any of his associates.
The receipt dated the morning of the offence. It's got a time and date on there, so that will be helped for CCTV inquiries. I located a black night trainer that was on the rear seat as well, so that'll go for DNA to locate an offender. I've packaged with the sole up, just in case we might have got footwear evidence from the scene to link it.
On the same day as the vehicle is being examined, CSIs are also at an address associated with the suspect, where they're known to stay.
When a suspect's been arrested, the suspect's custody clock starts ticking for how long they're going to be within custody before they're either released or charged. So within that time, we are under pressure to recover or certainly identify evidence which may link that suspect to our crime scene and the incident itself. So the examination of suspect address or suspect vehicle, we will try to get completed whilst that suspect is in custody, because you may find the firearm that's been used in the offence in their vehicle, or you may find clothing at their address that is similar to or matches that seen in CCTV footage, which can help the investigation team with going to CPS for charging decisions.
So first of all, I'm just going to go around and have a look before I start taking any pictures or anything. I'm having a look in the washing machine to see if anything's been recently washed that might match the description that we've got from any CCTV, but they're empty. Just have a quick look in the cupboards to see if there's anything out of the ordinary that might have been hidden away or stashed, like any phones or weapons or anything like that. I think this is the suspect's room, so I'm going to be a little bit more careful where I tread. There's a potential that there might be a weapon in here, so. Quite a lot of money there, maybe like $2,000. Yeah, it's quite a lot of money to have in your side table, isn't it? I mean, if he's got any links to sort of like drugs or something, then it could be relevant. Is that like a charger for an e-bike, maybe?
The police's theory is that the shooting is linked to the theft of an e-bike belonging to the suspect.
So I found a charger in a backpack in a wardrobe, and it might charge an e-bike, which might prove that this person had an e-bike at one point. But I think there was some sort of dispute over possession of an e-bike, or someone had stolen it. So that's why we're seizing it.
Forensic investigators will be working at the address for a number of hours. Meanwhile, the suspect is in custody, waiting to be questioned. But there's a potential problem in the investigation that they will have to solve very quickly.
Can you just state your name and date of birth, please?
The suspect has been arrested with a plaster cast on his foot. But the shooter on the shop CCTV isn't wearing one. The police need to establish what happened to him and when.
So they've stopped the car. We've got them both at roadside. They're both arrested. Forensic lifted the car.
Right.
He's got a fresh bottle.
Right. I'll chase up CCTV as soon as we can for an image of them in before. Morning, Jono.
Oh, morning, Steve. You all right?
How are you, pal?
Fine.
Have we managed to locate him in the hospital with his pot on?
Yes, so we know the discharge is at 17:50.
Yep.
We've got a sighting of him walking normally,
Yep.
free, at 20:28. And then we've got this footage from the hospital. We should see, there she is, running across, entering the hospital to sort of like get a wheelchair for him.
Ah, right, so she's taking him to hospital?
Yeah.
I wonder how he's done that.
I've no idea. We'll obviously obtain medical notes and see what the reason being is, but...
Yeah, but at least it clears it up, because at first it's obviously the thought
Yeah, so there
that
she
it
is.
can't have been him because he's got a pot on his leg,
No,
but now we
that's right.
clearly know it's some
Yeah.
time after.
While the forensic searches continue, detectives go through the evidence they already have to put to the suspect and the person he was travelling with when arrested. They've assembled for an interview strategy meeting.
If I go through what I've got as the key points and just make sure that we're all in agreement in this room. The main reason we've got to the suspect is through telecommunications and then CCTV. We've got the purchase of the SIM card. We've got CCTV footage of that purchase, and it is the suspect that is buying that card.
So he can say on that first interview to him, you bought that SIM card, you've registered that for it with you, you've made those phone calls, and let's see what he has to say.
Detectives want to challenge the suspect about his movements in the 2 days leading up to the shooting.
I'll just go through what I've got for the CCTV.
On the 10th of November, Craig, we see him approaching the direction of the shop, and then he enters the store, him only. And whilst in the store, he can be seen to have a conversation.
And then after that, the suspect comes into the shop, and then he leaves the shop with this burner phone to his ear. And this is when we think the call has been made. At 5:50 and 35, suspect enters the shop. 5:50 and 38 seconds, weapon is discharged. 5:50 and 42, suspect seen leaving the shop. And all we can say really is that obviously the clothing's different, but the height, build, etc. to us at this moment in time looks similar. Obviously we'll need to do some more work on that. Are you happy with that?
Yeah, I'll put that to him.
It would appear that from timings, he may have come on a bike, but we're currently tracking that.
Because when he goes for the SIM card on the 3rd, it's that a black mountain bike, isn't it?
Yeah.
The team has used CCTV and telecoms, the evidence that's immediately available, in a bid to get the suspect to charge with the CPS. But it will be the forensic evidence they are currently gathering that will help to build and cement the case.
Yes, it does.
Right.
So we need to make sure we brief search teams as well. We got some information, Craig, that said he was staying at some other address we weren't aware of. So that's currently got CSI going through it, and Pulsar will be going to that address. It's relatively close to the scene of the shooting. It's whether or not you want to drop that in on interview that we're currently looking at that address. It might elicit a response.
The Pulsar are police search advisor. They are licensed search officers, so they're specifically trained to search scenes an SIO can ask them to search for whatever is required for that investigation. So it could be something, say, as small as a micro SD card to a firearm, ammunition. If it is in a room, they will find it. CSIs don't search for items that are hidden or secreted, but we're not searching under carpets, for example, or within wall cavities, things like that.
The police search teams look for any items that might have been used in the shooting or that could suggest a motive. This evidence will then be forensically packaged and recovered and sent for forensic testing.
So we'll be looking for the clothing as described by witnesses, which at present is a black balaclava, black gloves, black and green tracksuit and a black body warmer.
It's a good shout at me and them. You see there's two front bubbles, can't you? Yeah. Got two distinct sort of bubbles on the front part of the footwear. In this bedroom, which was suspected as a suspect's bedroom, the only footwear that sort of matches is this pair here. It's got two sort of bubbles at the front part of the foot. So from the CCTV footage, when he's actually doing the job, it's a grey hoodie underneath a black puffer jacket, because there's a load of grey hoodies in there of various different shades.
I think it's a grey hoodie underneath.
Yeah.
This interview is being digitally, visually, audio recorded.
See these on the side of vehicles. So it's magnetic. Stick it on the side of your car, and obviously transport whatever you want inside it.
Can you just state your name and date of birth, please?
Prison letters making reference to fucking the police, fuck the judge, fuck the system, fuck the government, fuck the governor.
The offence I've investigated is an attempt murder.
I don't know. Yeah, so that's could be that, could it? Right where else with? Yeah, so that's that one.
And also mentioned the potential theft of an e-bike.
So the grey hoodie under the big black coat.
Yeah. It's hard to tell the shading in the grey though, and it's like... You look at that. It's hard to tell how light that is because of the chalk lighting. It's just grey.
Forensic testing of these items will be key for this case, as the suspect is currently refusing to answer questions in his police interviews.
Have you already had a shotgun in your possession, or have you had to go somewhere to pick that up? Where do you go after leaving the store?
This was our second interview. The first interview was a non-challenge interview, so we've not put any evidence to him, it's just general chat with him.
Would you say that's yourself who was in the store there?
And we've gone back in with a second interview, and on this interview we've shown him CCTV footage from inside the shop of the actual offence, and we've read statements from the witnesses who were all in the shop at that time. Once again, during this interview, he's not commented.
Can you tell me somewhere else that you might have been at 1750s that I can go and find that proves that you were not the person in the balaclava side of the shotgun?
Doesn't really want to be there. It's just a lot of looking away. He knows what he's saying, he knows what he wants to answer. He knows he's going to no comment. As you can see with him there, is just his head, he's not interested.
Overnight, news has come through from the CPS that the charges the police were pushing for have finally been approved.
I'm pleased to say through your hard work and efforts, got a charge for attempt murder and possession of a firearm with intent to endanger life. Section 16A of the Firearms Act was charged in the early hours of this morning. It will be remanded for court.
But for the charge to stand up in court, the hunt for forensic evidence continues.
It's a great result for the team. They've put in a lot of hours. The hard work's paid off. They know as well as I do, having been in this position a number of times, that this is where the real work starts, in generating the evidential proof, along with the guidance from our area forensic manager, submitting things that we think were suitable for forensic return, gunshot residue or contact with any area that we think that our suspect's been.
A suspect has been charged with attempted murder and possession of a firearm. The forensics and investigative teams are working around the clock, gathering evidence to secure a conviction. Crime scene investigators are currently searching a property connected to the suspect. A number of items are seized, including a mobile phone, smartwatch, and clothes. These will be taken for digital and forensic testing. With the suspect remanded in custody, the investigating team continues to track his movements before and after the shooting.
This morning looked at priorities around scenes, travel of motor vehicles, travel of suspects, so those CCTV trawls are still covering that sort of extensive areas where we know they've been.
Right, what footage have we got on that main road?
So, this is the bike going past, going.
Yeah. It's that car still following it. It's not exactly breaking speed, is it?
The route by the bicycle has gone this way.
Yeah.
It's already been established that the shooter used a bike to travel to and from the crime scene. Now, detectives have discovered a blue car that appears to be travelling in convoy with the bike.
We've identified the bike. We've also seen some footage that seems to show a car following the bike. Dark blue though, yeah?
It's metallic.
Yeah. So now what we're trying to establish from footage from other premises, whether the car does follow the bike and what direction it goes once it's past the bike, as the guy gets off the bike and goes into the shop, discharges the firearm. So you got the bike, headlights still on, and they followed the bike, and then we'll try and get the best shot of the vehicle to try and identify and make a model.
The car and the bike are both seen outside the property connected to the suspect, where he has a room, which has already been searched.
Please, people, car. Please.
But there's still work to be done on where the car, soon identified as a blue Dacia Duster, goes next. And all hope lies on some CCTV showing a car that looks similar on a different part of the route.
You look at all the other cars here, they're
That's
all
it.
in silver.
Yeah, the windows are a different shape on that as it is to that as well. Look at it. It's more slopey, is that back one. It's not the same car, it's different wheels.
Back to the bike.
Start again. Still got the bike. I would suggest now that being in this situation what we are, and we've lost that bottom road, that both teams now, including yourself, goes and hammers that area.
It's a setback. The wheel trim, car window and rear bonnet don't match. It's not the same car. But it's not long before there's a breakthrough.
I've just been looking on the ANPR cameras in the area for the last month, and I have just suddenly come across the vehicle that would be the potential vehicle.
ANPR cameras give detectives a number plate to work with. It proves that the blue Dacia Duster on the CCTV is registered to someone linked to the suspect.
From the ANPR pictures we've viewed, it matches the description of that vehicle. Craig, how long do you estimate for them warrants?
I'm just trying to see it.
So the plan is those two are going to be upgraded to suspects for assisting an offender. We're looking at getting warrants for both of them.
It's thought that this car could have been used to transport the shotgun to and from the attack. That's why it was travelling in convoy with the bike.
The plan of action is we'll get warrants for both their addresses this evening. Firearms officers will go to the address to get them both in, lock down the addresses to search and recover the Dacia Duster for us to search in the morning.
Once the warrants are executed and the car is impounded, the forensic examination begins.
Particularly looking for items for DNA to link people to the vehicle, the clothing that's been worn by the suspect in the shooting, and a fingerprint exam. I've removed the items that I don't have the techniques to fingerprint here. They need to go to the lab. And next I'm going to fingerprint the inside of the car and the outside of the car. When I'm doing my fingerprint exam for me, that means starting in one area, moving from top to bottom, because that's the way the powder falls. I'm also going to fingerprint the bottles that I'd removed from the car to do the DNA recovery from. That's to link suspects potentially to the vehicle and to the items within the vehicle, because we believe this vehicle has been used in the commission of a crime. When I've been doing my fingerprint exam, I've found some glove marks on the door in this area, and they're of significance because the intelligence we've got is that the suspect was wearing gloves at the time of the offence, and then he's potentially come to this car to put the shotgun inside the car. So glove marks appear potentially as he's opening and closing the door. If I'm using the natural light to see the shine of the powder, because it's a metallic powder, and I've found some ridge detail on the bottle. So what I'm going to do now, I'll take some general photographs, then I'll put my fingerprint labels on, and then I'm going to lift the ridge detail using my lifting tape. That gets mounted onto an acetate with the details of my exhibit. That gets sent to our Identification Bureau. They'll then be able to search that against the national database, see if we can get some suspects back, and then hopefully suspect details will progress the case.
This bit shows the push bike, which we believe that is on to go to the shop to do the discharge. And as that sets off, you'll see the same blue Dacia Duster.
And this address, unless it's all...
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
It's been decided that also will come afterwards to do their search, and their search techniques are very thorough, looking for things that I might find in places that I might not be able to get to.
The police search advisor is briefed by the CSI.
The suspect has left and arrived on foot. He's then been seen to approach this vehicle, and it's believed this vehicle is the one that's been used to transport the shotgun both before and after the incident.
And then the next bit of footage that we've got of the Dacia. So this location is near to a linked address. You will see the blue Dacia park up, and then two males get out of that vehicle. So he gets out of the passenger side, and the clothing he's wearing matches with what he was wearing the first time he goes into the shop.
Yeah.
And then you'll see the male get out the driver's side, who's a lot bigger male.
A firearms dog searches the vehicle before the police search advisors. The dog looks for firearms, ammunition, or any component parts of this type of weapon. The dog pays particular attention to the back seat, which could mean there is something there or has been there previously. A manual search then begins, which results in some clothes and bottles of liquids being put aside, but nothing is seized. The car search ends with no clothing or weapons found to directly connect the car to the attack. And the associates linked to the offender are saying no comment.
We've done 3 interviews with each, both shown the footage from the CCTV that we collected, and both have not commented on each interview as to everything. If anything, I had a bit of a smirk when he watched the discharge aspect of it, but no, nothing at all.
With suspects refusing to disclose anything, and the investigating team in need of hard evidence, a forensic strategy meeting is called.
Within the investigation, the area forensic manager or CSI supervisor will have forensic strategy meetings with the senior investigating officer or the investigation team to determine what items we have found at a scene and then which will be submitted for further examination. So in a firearms scene, one thing that we get there is gunshot residue or GSR. It's when the firearm is fired, the firearm disperses the gunshot residue. and it will potentially cover the firer in GSR. In the CCTV footage, the suspect in that doorway is likely to have it on things like his jacket, gloves, on his face, on mask, hoodie, pockets.
We've also got another pair of gloves from that car, haven't we?
A pair in the boot and a pair in the pocket on the back of the seat, isn't there?
There's his other trainer as well.
Yeah.
So we've got 4 potential GSR exhibits. We can submit 3 under one submission.
Right.
For me, I think I'd leave out the trainer just because he's worn it after he's been running in it.
Yeah.
Any GSR most likely fallen off.
Yeah.
The gloves are stored in the car, folded up. We know he's got black gloves on. So
yeah.
If they are the gloves worn, they'll be covered in GSR still.
The potential presence of gunshot residue, or GSR, is key to this investigation going the police's way. They need forensic evidence more than ever now. But there's a complication.
In terms of GSR, we've got a couple of issues. The fact that they might be shotgun users.
Yeah.
There's that club.
Yeah.
During the searches of a bedroom the suspect is thought to use, shooting certificates from a local gun club have been found. These could potentially explain away any gunshot residue that might be detected, depending on when the visit took place.
Today I'm going up to the gun club in relation to some items that were seized during a dress search. The idea of the visit is to identify when this lad has actually visited the gun club, what he's done up there, the firearms that he would have had access to. We've initially made inquiries with you with regards to address where we've recovered these cards from.
The police want to confirm that the suspect and another person visited the club.
Are you aware of either of those names from the records that you hold?
Not at this point. We will have to look into it a bit more.
Whether or not he was left unsupervised at any point and may have actually taken any ammunition?
They're supervised all the time, but most people shoot 25, so we count them in, count them out.
Yeah.
Because obviously it's quite important that people don't leave with live ammunition.
And also how many times he may have visited.
Let's get the records moving forward. I'll get the wife on it today. We'll help you as much or as little as you need.
Hopefully Mike here will give us a statement covering the details in relation to their visits. He's kind of suggesting to me that they might have visited on a couple of occasions.
Well,
this will enable us to show that he's actually been using firearms, maybe even using it as a practice method before actually going and doing this shooting.
In the investigation into the shooting, a suspect has been charged with attempted murder, but the gun used in this unprovoked attack has still not been located.
Have you already had a shotgun in your possession, or have you had to go somewhere to pick that up?
Criminals don't always hold guns, so they acquire them from other criminals that may hire that weapon out. So they borrow it to commit a specific offence, then they return it to that person when that offence is committed. It makes it much more difficult because that weapon gets quickly passed back to its keeper, and so it disappears from the trail.
While the search for the gun continues, the Digital Forensics Unit begins its examination of a number of mobile phones recovered as part of the investigation.
Looks like this exhibit arrived to us damaged. So what we're gonna try to do is to do minor repairs. This one looks like it's actually bent, possibly has been damaged on purpose. So what we're trying to do is make sure this device is fully operational, and hopefully if I can get it to a working condition, they'll be able to get all the information from it, possibly evidence. So it looks like the device is charging well. So let's take a look inside. Motherboard is probably intact. Next step will be probably just replacing the screen and see, we'll take it from there. As we don't have the correct PIN, we will use advanced technique to acquire the data and to download this phone fully.
Once the digital forensic analysis of these devices is complete, it helps the investigating team to develop a picture of the suspect's movements and who he was in communication with.
The work I've done around identifying numbers for suspect, I'd look at were there any contact with, say, the suspect's number and the victim's number, who have they been contacting around the time of the offence, then look at like the mass, has it travelled anywhere, like has he travelled from his home address to the place of the shooting, has he travelled back, if not where's he gone after, has he discarded a firearm somewhere, where has he been, so you'd pull all that data together and end up producing a timeline of events. The suspect's phone was in contact with the shop owner's son, which is how the communication started when he said he'd meet him at the shop. The suspect's number was last in use at 6:10 and the shooting happened at 10:02. So 20 minutes after the shooting, it dropped, so no longer in use. 15 minutes after that, a new number has been inserted into the handset, and then that number is only in use for 2.5 hours before that's dropped as well. When you look at phone data, sometimes no usage in phone data is almost as critical as somebody overusing their phone. If he's gone to the shop, carried out a shooting, gone home, he's not going to be texting or ringing anybody, is he? It's like evident that he could have possibly gone and committed that shooting because he's not using his phone for a period around that time.
The phone data not only connects the suspect to the location of the shooting on the day in question, it also puts him in repeated contact with the person who was in the car with him when he was arrested and the people who owned the blue Dacia Duster immediately before and after the attack, helping to corroborate the CCTV evidence of their movements.
Craig has now got it at the bottom of here, and he's got it at the shop. What we've been trying to do is piece together the movements of the Dacia Duster from when it leaves at 16:51:07 to it going to the store, which we have now done.
So the significance of this bit is at 17:10 outside the house, the footage on this clip shows no lights of any stationary vehicle outside that address. However, at 17:17 we now have a vehicle stationary outside that address with the headlights illuminated, and that vehicle remains stationary outside that address until 17:44. The significance of that is at 17:44 we've got a sighting of him on a push bike, and as he cycles off at the same time the stationary vehicle drives off, and that can be clearly seen on the footage, a metallic blue Dacia Duster heading in the same direction. This footage is important because what we're saying is that puts the bicycle, which we believe is on, and the Dacia Duster together minutes before the actual firearms discharge takes place.
Meanwhile, the shotgun wadding and pellets retrieved by CSIs from the convenience store are being tested by ballistics expert Andre Horn.
Shotguns can cause devastating wounds at close ranges, so they are definitely very lethal. If I can accurately determine the shot size, that will assist the police if they do recover any ammunition from a suspect to determine if it could have been the ammunition used in this incident. We have a couple of lead shot pellets. The size of the shot pellets is consistent with bird shot used for hunting. Because these are impact damage, I can't measure the diameter of the pellet, so we do it by weight. From my chart, we appear to be dealing with UK shot size 7.5.
Once the size of the pellets has been correctly identified, Andre moves on to the wadding.
This is an example of a shotgun cartridge with the part of the case cut away. That's the plastic wadding. Wadding is a buffer in a shotgun cartridge between the powder and the shot pellets. The wadding is expelled by the shotgun with all the shot pellets, and it usually travels a distance of, say, approximately 20 meters or so before it drops to the floor and the pellets continue traveling on. But wadding is important for us because we can use this to determine the gauge of the shotgun that was involved in the incident. It is impact damaged and it is slightly deformed, but I'm satisfied that it is 12 gauge in size. These are all pieces of a puzzle that help the police to put together evidence that would be required in court to prosecute someone.
There's also an important update on the suspect's visit to the local gun club.
We've made further inquiries with the gun club. The visit to the gun club was 12-18 months prior to the commission of this crime. There would never be any GSR issues in relation to them being able to say, well, the GSR that you may find on any clothing or skin is from that, because it is too far in the past.
A man has been shot at point-blank range in a convenience store in Yorkshire. The suspect has been charged with attempted murder. The investigation now switches to the search for gunshot residue, or GSR. With a number of items recovered during police and forensic searches being examined. This includes a black man bag. If gunshot residue is found on the bag, it will firmly place the bag in the same location as the gun and the suspect.
Firstly, taking a quality control sample. I will sample myself and the brown paper which we'll examine the item on. We analyse these if an item is positive to show that any GSR on the item hasn't come from us. So when I first put an item on the bench, I'll assess the item to see what I have. So I've got at least one pocket. Check it, because you don't want to open a bag and find ammunition in it. I've got an inside pocket and an inside zip pocket. In order to recover any GSR that was present, we use a device called a GSR stub that has a sticky carbon adhesive, and we'll dab this over certain areas of the item and put them into the scanning electron microscope to visualise and analyse for GSR.
Other items that are tested and photographed include a pair of joggers.
Assess what you've got.
And the GSR mini-tapes that were taken from the blue Dacia Duster when it was forensically analysed by the CSI.
The police force themselves this time have sampled the vehicle, and they've used a mini-tape, so it's a piece of acetate plastic with an adhesive on one end, and they've used that to sample certain areas of the vehicle. When we receive those, we have to cut the tapes down to enable them to go into the scanning electron microscope.
The GSR stubs will then be analysed on the scanning electron microscope.
Gunshot residue are very small particles that are produced when a primed ammunition is discharged in a gun. The particles have specific elements present in them, and to actually do the chemical analysis we need a powerful microscope called the scanning electron microscope. Gunshot residue can deposit within about 3 meters of gunfire, but potentially further. So these gunshot residue particles can deposit on someone who might fire the gun, a close bystander, or other surfaces. So electrons are now being produced by the filament and will start to interact with the sample. Each of the samples that have been taken from the items in this case are analysed, and then the results are collated into a report, and I'll explain what the findings mean, whether there's gunshot residue there or not, and that report will be sent to the area forensic manager for West Yorkshire Police.
The GSR report forms part of a much larger package of evidence that the police are compiling. This package will be taken by the team to a pre-trial hearing, where all the evidence prepared by the prosecution will be assessed.
Prior to trial, we will have a pre-trial sitting at court, and the defence will argue that there's not sufficient to proceed to trial, and we'll argue that there's sufficient to put it before a jury, and that it shouldn't be down to barristers to argue whether it's continued or discontinued. The judge will have the final say on whether it gets discontinued at that point or whether we proceed to put it before a jury.
The GSR test results are in, and the laboratory report is being written. It reveals there was no gunshot residue found on the items sent for analysis. Despite this setback, the team are determined to do their best for the victim, and with the strength of the evidence they have as a whole, take it to trial.
When you look at the evidence, both pre-offence and post-offence, then there is sufficient for us to put it before a jury to decide whether the defendant is guilty.
The attempted murder is brought to trial, and the team believe they have a strong case.
The fact is, it's a really serious offence. A firearm has been used in public and somebody's been injured, so we would always push as far as we can for the victim.
It has taken 14 months to get to this point, and the jury has reached their verdict. For the victim, the closure they and their family wanted hasn't happened. And they all now have to try and come to terms with the fact no one has been held to account for what happened.
He is very down, he's very depressed, he's still coming to terms with what's happened to him, and I think that sort of the impact that it's had on him mentally will also take a long time for him to recover from. Yeah, he's just in fear, he's having nightmares, he's struggling to sleep, and just sort of overplaying what's happened in his mind continuously.
The victim has been left with PTSD and is no longer the happy, outgoing person they once were. The victim struggles with anxiety and has installed CCTV and guard dogs into his home. The incident hasn't just changed the victim's life, but the lives of their entire family, all of whom are finding it hard to accept what the victim has been through. Next time.
West Yorkshire Police, what's the emergency?
Hello, mate. We've just found human remains.
It's got most of the thigh bone, it's got a kneecap.
I can see it now.
Yeah.
What's your thoughts at this stage? Are we thinking
body dump there, or are we looking at potentially it's being brought to the site?
We still don't know whether we have just one body in the site or multiple bodies.
This will require the exchange of police data across countries' boundaries.
The hope, if they would find the bodies and that DNA would match, that would bring maybe a conclusion to this case.
Xin chào các bạn nhé. Đây mình xin gửi tới các bạn một nhạc phẩm nữa của ca sĩ Thanh Lam, bài hát Hoa Sữa. Em vẫn từng đợi anh như hoa từng đợi nắng, như gió tìm rằng phi lao, như trời cao mong mây trắng. Em vẫn từng đợi anh trên những chặng đường quen, tiếng hát hai sao động thoáng mùi hoa êm đềm. Kỷ niệm ngày xưa vẫn còn đâu đó, những bạn bè chung những con đường nhỏ. Hoa sữa vẫn ngọt ngào đầu phố đêm đêm. Có lẽ nào anh lại quên em, có lẽ nào anh lại quên em. Em vẫn từng đợi anh như hoa từng đợi nắng, như gió tìm rằng phi lao, như trời cao mong mây trắng. Em vẫn từng đợi anh trên những chặng đường quen, tiếng hát ai sao động thoáng mùi hoa êm đềm. Kỷ niệm ngày xưa vẫn còn đâu đó, những bạn bè chung những con đường nhỏ. Hoa sữa vẫn ngọt ngào đầu phố đêm đêm. Có lẽ nào anh lại quên em, có lẽ nào anh lại quên em. Kỷ niệm đường xưa vẫn còn đâu đó, những bạn bè chung những con đường nhỏ. Hoa sữa vẫn ngọt ngào đầu phố đêm đêm. Có lẽ nào anh lại quên em, có lẽ nào anh